Good evening and welcome to the August 28th regular City Council meeting. Before we begin the meeting, let me review the procedures of the meeting. The audience is reminded that this is a business meeting of the City Council, therefore clapping, cheering, and outbursts are not permitted. Speakers must complete a request to speak form located at the entrance of the council chambers. Submit your completed form to either the city clerk or the sergeant at arms. When your name has been called, use the microphone at the lectern on the audience's right and state your name and address. If you do not wish to publicly state your street address, you may state only your city or unincorporated Brevard County. Speak to City Council as a body. Do not address the mayor and City Council members individually. Be mindful of the timer at the front of the room and wrap up your comments before your speaking time ends. The following time limits will generally apply. Speaking times may be varied by the mayor with the approval of City Council. Public comments, most agenda items, and the consent agenda up to 3 minutes. Items designated as a public hearing and petitions, remonstrances, and communications up to 5 minutes. An applicant, representative, or person who has legal standing to support or oppose a quasi-judicial matter will be permitted enough time as reasonably determined by the City Council to create a record before the City Council. These matters generally include site plan, plat, zoning of property, conditional use, variance, building-related permit or appeal, abandon and vacate requests, annexation, and other applications of law to specific properties. So thank you for joining us this evening, and we'll begin with the invocation with Director Ron Newman with the Jewish Followers of Jesus, Inc. And if you wish to participate in the invocation, please stand.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this opportunity to be here at this meeting. And Father, we thank you for the freedom we have in America just to assemble like this. And Lord, we pray for the council members and the leadership tonight that you give them wisdom and guidance as they meet with the issues this evening. And Father, again, we thank you so much for our freedoms. Father, we pray you continue to protect the police department of the Melbourne area and keep them safe, Father. And Father, we thank you so much for all you've done for us and bless this meeting. In Jesus the Messiah we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Director Newman. Now please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, next is A3 roll call. Mr. McEwen.
Councilmember Moore.
Present.
Councilmember Debbie Thomas.
Here.
Councilmember Alfrey.
Here.
Councilmember Lopez.
Here.
Councilmember Tim Thomas.
Here.
Vice Mayor Minus.
Here.
Mayor Meehan.
Here. Thank you. For A4 is proclamations and presentations. I have one proclamation. Okay. Thank you, Kevin. Okay, so we have two individuals. We have Tammy Sandberg, who's first vice regent of the Commodore John Berry chapter, Daughters of the American Revolution, and Betty Jo Green, Commodore in the Melbourne Beach. So if you want to come up. Thank you for you ladies for being here. It's always great to see you every year. Proclamation, City of Melbourne, Florida, whereas September 17th, 2018 marks the 231st anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States by America by the Constitutional Convention. And whereas it is fitting and proper to officially recognize this magnificent document and the anniversary of its creation. And whereas it is appropriate to officially recognize the patriotic celebrations that will commemorate the occasion. And whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuance of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America, designating September 17th through 23rd as Constitution Week. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Kathleen H. Meehan, Mayor of the City of Melbourne, Brevard County, Florida, do hereby proclaim the week of September 17th through the 23rd, 2018 as Constitution Week in the City of Melbourne, and encourage all our citizens to reaffirm the ideals that the framers of the Constitution had in 1787. Witness my hand in the seal of the city this 28th day of August, 2018. Kathleen H. Meehan, Mayor. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the City Council and the Mayor for this wonderful opportunity to speak to you today. We are here from the Daughters of the American Revolution. It's the largest women's lineage society in the United States. In order to become a member, you have to have a patriot that served in the American Revolution or helped in the American Revolution. We are very strong in education, historic preservation, and patriotism. So we like to help around the city working with the veterans. You'll see us around. So anybody that is interested, we'd love to have you check us out. You could go to dar.org and find out more information. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. We'll have Cheryl Mall take our picture. Mm-hmm. Oh. Okay, now I will sing. Oh, no. That's for the Entertainment Committee. Okay. All right. Here you go, Mr. McNeese.
Thank you, Mayor. We have two city employees we want to honor tonight. Once a month, we recognize people that have exemplary and long service to the city. And I really like these two tonight because they really represent the kind of people that are the backbone of our organization who you don't necessarily see. You don't see their face. They work kind of behind the scenes. First, if Tammy Rodriguez will come down from payroll. Tammy's been with us for 25 years in the city of Melbourne. She came to work as an accounts clerk. Stand right here in the middle with the mayor. She came to us as an accounts clerk and has worked her way up through the system. And the people here really like her because she makes sure that we get paid every 2 weeks. And we would grind to a halt in about 5 minutes if we didn't get paid on that every other Friday. And has done all kinds of work through the years, working with retirees, working with our insurance, improving our payroll system. She gets along great with all the departments. Of course, she has to work with everyone, and has served on our employee benefits committee, helping us keep our employee benefits in line. Has done all kind of volunteer work in the community, just the kind of person that really represents the backbone of this organization. So I really appreciate that you came out tonight and let the council make a fuss over you a little bit. I want to say, Tammy, thank you for your 25 years of service. The mayor has some gifts for you. And thank you for your service. Back in just a minute for a picture. Now, Carol Burns. Now, Carol, come on down, Carol. Carol's going to look a little more familiar to you. You may know her from our union impasse hearings, but Carol came to the city 30 years ago, and since she came to work for the Human Resource Department, or actually she didn't come to work for the Human Resource Department, she came to work in the Fleet Department, and she had a degree in Human Resources, worked her way up, has been promoted 4 or 5 times in her 30 years to her position as Human Resources Manager. She, along the way, got her Certified Human Resources Professional certification, so she's professionalized herself along the way. And Carol is as steady a hard worker as we have in this building. And the amount of work that she churns out, the work they do in that department to keep us going is just amazing. And never a complaint, always a smile on her face, at least when I'm around. I don't know what happens when. But you couldn't get somebody else like Carol for $1 million. So Carol, for your 30 years of service, I say thank you. And if the council members will come down, we'll have a photo opportunity. Tammy, come on back up. Council members will all want to shake your hand after the picture. You're on. I'm anchor.
Okay.
Thank you, council members. And thank you, Tammy and Carol.
All right, next is A5, approval of the minutes of August 14, 2018, but Mr. McEwen is going to give us an update.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to report that the minutes reflect Community Development Director Cindy Dittmer as present. She was actually not here. Present was Cheryl Dean, the planning manager, so we would just ask you to approve the minutes with that correction.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McEwen. So, council, what is your pleasure?
Mayor,
Ms. Moore.
I move for approval of the August 14th, 2018 minutes with corrections.
Second.
All right, I have a motion for, who's second? Okay. I have a motion for approval by Ms. Moore of the minutes of August 14th, 2018 with the correction. Second by Mr. Thomas. Discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes. All right, item A6.
Mayor,
All right, Ms. Lopez.
I did have a comment.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I was unable to attend the last meeting, but wanted the opportunity to address some concerns and give my input on the Tapestry Hotel project for the downtown area.
Okay.
After reviewing the minutes, I was very impressed and confident that the representatives of this project did a great job representing the project, and they were able to address my concerns, leaving me very confident that this is a good project for the downtown area, and I can support it. My only concern was the $2 million hub financing the city provided them. I am confident that this $2 million loan will be used for the right reasons in developing that project. But I do want to make sure that developers coming to our city with projects to do their own financing. I don't think the city should be in the habit of doing this again. But I do want to thank the city council for taking the leadership of approving that agreement. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you, Ms. Lopez. Before I go on, I'd like to do a moment of silence for Senator John McCain, an American hero. Senator McCain defines service, sacrifice, character, and integrity. So let's give him a moment of silence. Thank you.
Amen.
Amen. Item A6 is the city manager's report. Mr. McNeese, you're on.
Now I'm on. Thank you, Mayor. You have my monthly activities report. I'll be happy to answer any questions. The only other thing I wanted to take a moment for tonight is I want Deputy City Manager Shannon Lewis to give you a quick update on the status of our public information effort related to the police station bond referendum that's coming, just so you'll know what we'll have for you, what your role will be, and how we're going to roll that as we move forward. I knew you're probably wondering about that. I wanted to talk about it for a minute tonight,
Okay.
so you're aware.
Thank you. Working with the public information officer and the police chief and the police department, we're preparing and have prepared really just some facts and basic educational points for the city council. We'll be reaching out to you beginning tomorrow to schedule 15-30 minutes with you to go over a little bit about the project and about the the information we've received from the city attorney's office in education versus advocacy. So we're going to go through that a little bit. But we'll have a web page that's live by the end of this week with facts on there for our citizens. We'll also be providing you with some material that you can hand out to citizens. Again, that will be factually based and educational pieces only. And that will be ready within the next 2 weeks. Working with the police department, figuring out various community groups that they're attending and able to get in front of those groups. So we're preparing that schedule for anyone who would want information from the city, from our police department, where we can go and get information to the public. We'll also be providing an opportunity for an open house in early October to the extent that individuals would like to come to the police station, talk with our police officers and police chief about the needs of the facility and what we do and how the police department serves the public. And then we'll provide information via our social media a little bit closer towards the election so that the information is fresh for people. But again, we'll be reaching out to you tomorrow to start scheduling a few minutes with you, and just wanted to give you that information tonight.
All right, thank you, Ms. Lewis. Any
Madam Mayor.
comments? Yeah, Mr. Thomas.
Yeah, thank you for that. I know when this first came before the council, I think in June, one of the discussions we had was the importance of winning the hearts and minds of the residents when this referendum comes before them in November. So this education plan is vital for this being accomplished. And so I look forward to hearing y'all's input and what y'all have planned. And we're less than 70 days out, so we have a lot of work to do. But whatever I can do to support this education plan, I'm all for it, and we've got to get it done. So thank you.
Mayor,
All right, Ms. Moore.
I want to know how the Sunshine Law is going to impact us as council people, because oftentimes we're at the same functions and people are asking us, and we're sitting at the table together. What do we do about this?
You have to talk in private. I mean, you're going to have to, you can't talk in front of us, but you're going to have to take the conversation somewhere else.
Somebody got to walk off.
Right?
So that's a very broad question, and I'll answer like all attorneys.
Sorry.
It depends.
Sorry.
So I would just encourage you to talk to me about the specifics, but I think that you have to remember that the Sunshine Law prohibits discussion of things that are likely to come before council. So if you were going to draw hairs here, you have already voted that it's going to be on the ballot. So that's technically something that can be addressed in such a forum as you mentioned. But keep in mind that there's other issues that still need to come before council that are related to this item, including the financing mechanism in terms of approval of any kind of bond that might be issued, or what the police station would look like on a construction project, things like that. So to that end, I would encourage you not to have those types of conversation in an abundance of caution.
Okay.
Vice Mayor Minus?
Mayor, on the city manager's report on page 28 of the CDBG report, the Florida Avenue bike path sidewalk construction that was done by Don Lucetti Construction, there is a section of sidewalk, if you will, between Appin Way and Lipscomb. I brought that to the attention before, and I see where staff is working on the closeout of that. I'm real concerned about it slopes real low. We had these torrential rains recently, and we had over a foot or more of water in those areas. I noticed it because there were some young gentlemen trying to run, and he had to get in the street versus getting on the sidewalk. So I'm real concerned about that stretch of sidewalk there that, in my opinion, if I will, my engineering 101, it needs to be redone because it slopes down, and I can see 15, 20, 30 years of going through that every time it's a torrential rain, where we have to deal with that.
Okay.
So I'm asking for that to be revisited, torn up, or whatever needs to be done to redo that.
Okay. All right, so Mr. McNeese,
Yes, Mayor. Thanks to Councilwoman Minus, the city engineer is already on that issue and evaluating what's the right thing. It seems obvious the right thing to do is to raise the sidewalk. One of the issues, though, then you create a dike, and so it's about looking at that system there. What is the right fix? But Jenny's been in that already, and she'll report back when she knows what the right fix is. If the right fix is raising the sidewalk, that's what will happen.
okay.
Just make sure we solve the problem and don't create another one.
Okay, thank you. I'll check back. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Anyone else? All right, seeing none. Next is A7, public comments. Do I have any sign-up sheets? Oh, right. All right, first is Eric Ellebrock.
Eric V. Ellebrock, 1948 Tyler Avenue, Melbourne, Florida, lifelong resident of the city of Melbourne. I want to congratulate City Manager McNeese for becoming in the top 6 finalists for city manager position of Naples, Florida. I personally think that after he got a raise and so forth and so on, that should be immaterial. But I want to state unequivocally that I refuse to accept either the blame or the credit for Mr. McNeese going looking for another job. Now, if Mr. McNeese wants to go and become the city manager of a city that has a serious iguana issue, I can't think of a better man for it. Because, you know, the iguanas down there in Naples are really bad. And if anybody can deal with cold-blooded reptiles, it's Mr. McNeese. So, here's the deal. He's been a good city manager. He's been the shortest term city manager that we've had. We need to seriously think about where our next city manager is going to come from. And I think it's time to look internally. We've got some people who've been in the city manager's office for a long, long time. And for that salary, we can hire somebody and then internally and spread that salary out. So it'll be a communal effort for a new city manager. We need to seriously think about that. As far as Mr. McNeese goes, he's been a good city manager, all right? He's fine, thank you. Don't let the doorway hit you. Now, to jump another thing, the new police station, again, I'm going to say it, y'all are going to lose. And the reason for that, there's a couple reasons. But as the people I've talked to, do they really think that the police are worth a multi-million-dollar police station? You have to ask yourself that question. We can provide a new police station other than building one from scratch. But again, we got to get down to this. It hasn't been publicly announced, of course, but we should have done a special election, man. But again, in November, we'll find out. And that, of course, will give me another chance to say, I told you so. Thank you.
All right. And Mr. Hellebrock, we want Mr. McNeese to stay, all right? We do not want him to leave. All right. Next is Richard Wagner. Name and city.
My name is Rick Wagner. I live in Melbourne. I'd like to take a minute to talk to you about the liveaboard situation at the marinas on the Galley Harbor.
Okay.
In the past, I have provided information as to liveaboards at Waterline Marina, as well as an unnamed marina to the north of that, of Waterline, at the north side of the bridge. These marinas continue to have liveaboard activity, both of them. It is my understanding Waterline Marina operates on a system, and I got this information from code enforcement, that they're allowed to have people staying on their vessels, living on their vessels. If they stay there for either 21 or 23 days, I'm not sure the exact days, they can leave for a day for 24 hours and return and repeat the process. And that can go on indefinitely per my understanding. If there is, I could not find this ordinance in any of the city ordinances, but if there is an ordinance of this nature, it's my suggestion that some revision to that ordinance be made, because that just allows liveaboard activity. The other thing about that ordinance, if there is such an ordinance, is that there's no controlling that. Nobody knows when these vessels leave for a day or return. There's no control over that whatsoever. And it would be almost impossible to control that. The other thing I'd like to bring up about live aboard activity, and I think the city city manager and the city and the city council has done a lot of activity recently on curbing this live aboard situation. But it shouldn't fall entirely on the city. DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, writes submerged land leases for these properties, for these marinas to operate. These marinas operate on submerged land leases. And these land leases have use controls and restrictions within the land leases that DEP is not enforcing. And my suggestion to the city staff, if they're dealing with these issues, that they should contact, if there's problems at these marinas, that they should contact DEP and ask DEP to also enforce their regulations and restrictions under their submerged land leases. Again, it should not fall entirely on the city. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wagner. Next is Scott Ellis.
Scott Ellis, 2348 Dorden Drive, O'Galley. Have met with the IT director, putting together information now. I've picked up a detailed budget. So going through the details, probably next we'll be sorting out software licensing versus annual maintenance agreements, purchases. Have gone through most of the payroll processing from telestaff to paycheck. Only a few places left to pick up the gap between how it gets telestaff to the actual paycheck. And of course, I've also already gone through that before with the county. The county and the city do it quite differently in those areas. And I am just waiting on my next meeting.
Okay. Mr. McNeese, I guess you're ready to schedule a meeting? Is it?
Be happy to.
Okay.
I don't know
If that's what we're referring to.
Yes, well, I don't know where you are in the process. I don't know the legal process there for when it takes that you are eligible to meet.
I'll be in touch.
So you're eligible in like the next few weeks or next few months?
Next few days. Days.
Okay, well, we'll have the meeting then.
All right. Thank you, Mr.
Good.
Ellis. All right, that's it for public comments. I'll close it and go right into item B, unfinished business. Ordinance number 2018-36, A and V number 383, Ms. Allison Dolly.
2018-36, an ordinance of the City of Melbourne, Brevard County, Florida, providing for the vacation of a 50-foot wide ingress-egress right-of-way easement known as Phillip Street that runs along the east property line of two abutting parcels located south of University Boulevard and west of Harbor City Boulevard, 3010 Phillip Street, making findings, providing for conditions of approval, providing an effective date, and providing an adoption schedule.
Thank you, Ms. Dolly. This is under engineering, Ms. Jenny Lamb.
Yes, this abandon and vacate request is a result of the property owner now owns all of the property adjacent to this right-of-way, or to this right-of-way easement. Let me be clear about that. So staff recommends and supports approval of ordinance number 2018-36.
All right, thank you, Ms. Lamb. Any questions for Ms. Lamb? All right, seeing none, council, what is your pleasure?
Mayor,
Vice Mayor
Mayor.
Minus.
Mayor, could I just have you call for disclosures in the public hearing?
Thank you very much. This is quasi judicial. Is there any disclosures?
No.
Seeing none, this is a public hearing. Do I have any sign-up sheets? I will close the public hearing, bring it back to Vice Mayor Ms. Minus.
Mayor, I move for approval of ordinance number 2018-36.
Second.
All right, I have a motion for approval of item number 8, as stated in council's package by Vice Mayor Minus, second by Ms. Moore. Discussion? This is second reading. It's going to require a roll call vote.
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Debbie Thomas?
Aye.
Councilmember Alfrey?
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Councilmember Tim Thomas?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Minus?
Aye.
Mayor Meehan?
And I vote aye, and the motion passes. Item number 9 is ordinance number 2018-37, A and V number 384. Miss Allison Dolly.
An ordinance of the City of Melbourne, Brevard County, Florida, providing for the vacation of a 121-foot portion of a 12-foot wide alley that runs between two lots located east of Bryan Street on the north side of New Haven Avenue, 22 East New Haven Avenue, making findings, providing for conditions of approval, providing an effective date, and providing an adoption schedule.
Thank you, Miss Dolly. This is under engineering. Miss Jenny Lamb.
This abandon and vacate request is similar to the previous one where the applicant owns the property on both sides of the alleyway and is looking to develop the property, and that's something that's already been in front of you for a rezoning request. Staff recommends approval of ordinance number 2018-37.
Thank you, Miss Lamb. Any questions for Miss Lamb? Seeing none, this is quasi-judicial. Any disclosures?
No.
Seeing none, this is a public hearing. Do I have any sign-up sheets? I will close the public hearing and bring it back to council. What is your pleasure?
Mayor,
Ms. Lopez.
approval of ordinance number 2018-37.
Second.
All right, I have a motion for approval of ordinance number 2018-37 by Ms. Lopez, second by Ms. Thomas. Discussion? Seeing none, this is second reading. It's going to require a roll call vote.
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Debbie Thomas?
Aye.
Councilmember Alfrey?
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Councilmember Tim Thomas?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Minus?
Here.
Mayor
I'm
Meehan?
sorry. Aye.
And I vote aye, and the motion passes. Item number 10 is ordinance number 2018-38, A and V number 386. Miss Allison Dolly.
An ordinance of the City of Melbourne, Brevard County, Florida, providing for the vacation of a 3-foot wide by 8-foot long portion of a 5-foot wide public utility and drainage easement that runs along the south lot line of 1132 White Oak Circle, making findings, providing an effective date, and providing an adoption schedule.
Thank you, Miss Dolly. This is under engineering. Miss Jenny Lamb.
This abandon and vacate request is the applicants requested because they wish to place an emergency generator on the side of their house. As I discussed at the last meeting, there is additional room between the neighbors or the lots on these or at this location because there is part of the homeowners association tract for the stormwater retention, so there's a little more space between. Additionally, we have looked at the generator that's in there and looked at what the noise volume was, and it meets our noise ordinance. Staff recommends approval of ordinance number 2018-38.
Thank you, Miss Lamb. Any questions for Miss Lamb? Seeing none, this is quasi-judicial. Any disclosures? Seeing none, this is a public hearing. Do I have any sign-up sheets? No, I will close the public hearing, bring it back to council. What is your pleasure?
Mayor,
Ms. Thomas.
move for approval of ordinance number 2018-38.
Second.
I have a motion for approval of ordinance number 2018-38 by Ms. Thomas, second by Mr. Alfrey. Discussion? Seeing none, this is second reading. It's going to require a roll call vote.
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Debbie Thomas?
Aye.
Councilmember Alfrey?
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Councilmember Tim Thomas?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Minus?
Aye.
Mayor Meehan?
And I vote aye, and the motion passes. We are now into new business. Item C11, resolution number 3771, a resolution certifying the stormwater utility assessment role, and this will be under engineering. Ms. Jenny Lamb.
Yes, this item and the next item are both related to our stormwater utility and to the assessment role and then also the budget. So this first item is for the actual assessment role. Florida statute requires that the city certify the non-ad valorem assessment role to the tax collector by September 15th of each year. We tend to do this the end of August. In fact, last year, I think our first meeting was pushed back and we would not have met the September 15th deadline. So that's why we are doing this a little early. It's not actually early. We do the same thing every year. The assessment roll lists the calculated stormwater utility fee for every parcel in the city and is used by the tax collector to bill the property owners on their tax bill. Per the assessment roll, the total amount to be billed to 32,510 parcels is $2,939,906.08. Recommend approval of resolution number 3771.
Thank you, Ms. Lamb. Any questions for Ms. Lamb? All right, seeing none, council, what is your pleasure?
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Thomas.
recommend approval of Resolution 3771.
Second.
All right, I have a motion for approval of resolution number 3771 by Mr. Thomas, second by Ms. Moore. Discussion?
Mayor,
Yes, Ms. Lopez.
I want to say that I thank the city to keep that same rate for several years already, so that's good. No increase.
That's right. All right, any other further discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes. Item C12, resolution number 3772, a resolution to adopt an annual stormwater utility budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2018, in the amount of $3,773,174. Ms. Jenny Lamb.
City Code Chapter 50 requires that we adopt the budget for the operation and maintenance of the stormwater management program on or before September 15th of each year. This budget is what was presented at the budget workshop on August 1st. You do notice the numbers are slightly different, significantly different, but what we've done is some of that is for, we are receiving Save Our Indian River Lagoon funds, we're receiving grant funds, and also we have used reserves for this year so that we could supplement those grant funds coming in for our portion of the match. So that's the difference in the number. I just wanted to point out, I recognize there's a difference in the number, and that's the reason behind it. Staff recommends approval of resolution number 3772.
Thank you, Ms. Lamb. Any questions for Ms. Lamb? All right, seeing none, this is a public hearing. Do I have any sign-up sheets? I'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council. What is your pleasure?
Mayor,
Ms. Thomas.
move for approval of resolution number 3772.
A second.
All right, I have a motion for approval of resolution number 3772 by Ms. Thomas, second by Vice Mayor Minus. Discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes. Item number 13 is ordinance. Let me get right to it. All right. Ordinance number 2018-39, A and V number 385, Miss Allison Dolly.
Yes, ma'am. An ordinance of the City of Melbourne, Brevard County, Florida, providing for the vacation of a 25-foot wide public ingress, egress, utility, and drainage easement that runs along the east property lines of lots 4 and 5, Deer Lakes Commercial Subdivision, located west of Wickham Road and south of Deer Lakes Drive, 5300 and 5400 North Wickham Road. Making findings, providing for conditions of approval, providing an effective date, and providing an adoption schedule.
Thank you, Ms. Dolly. This is under engineering, Ms. Jenny Lamb.
Yes, the owners of both Lot 4 and 5 are coming into the city for development at this time. And part of the platting process established the 25-foot wide public ingress, egress, utility, and drainage easement. And I sort of wanted to explain the two exhibits that were provided to you. I know they were a little confusing. There's actually 4 easements over the same area. So there was a 5-foot FPL easement, there's a 10-foot landscape buffer, and then the 25-foot ingress, egress, public utility, and drainage easement. So actually 3, but 4 functions in those 3. They were all over that same, I say the same 25 feet, but it was 5, 10, 25, but they're all over top of one another. So that's why those colors are represented on the aerial exhibit that you received as part of your agenda package. What the applicants are proposing is to move the access, the ingress egress, so the access portion of the easement, shifting that over to accommodate their development plans. And because it doesn't make sense to run an interior road that, within 25 feet of the Wickham Road right-of-way. The drainage that exists within what's shown as the blue and the green and the yellow in your sketch here, that that will remain as a drainage easement. And I say remain, we have to vacate it, and then they will give us a new drainage easement where the ingress egress easement was, and then give us a separate ingress egress easement for the new section. I know that's complicated, but I thought I needed to explain it because when you look at that map, you're like, whoa, what are all these colors? I was confused. I tried to clean it up the best I could. And so I just wanted to point out that's what's happening here. So the conditions of this abandon and vacate request are that a new public ingress egress easement and a drainage easement be granted for the proposed drive aisle, and a public utilities and drainage easement be granted over where the existing 25-foot public ingress egress drainage and utility easement are, because like I said, there are drainage and utilities in what's still there. So with that, and I hope I didn't complicate things too much with that explanation, I recommend approval of ordinance number 2018-39.
Thank you, Ms. Lamb. Any questions for Ms. Lamb? All right, seeing none, this is quasi-judicial. Any disclosures? Seeing none. This is a public hearing. Do I have any sign-up sheets? I'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council. What is your pleasure?
Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor.
I think Mr. Thomas, was first. Mr. Thomas.
I recommend approval of ordinance number 2018-39.
Second.
I have a motion for approval of ordinance number 2018-39 by Mr. Thomas, second by Mr. Alfrey. Discussion? Seeing none. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes. Item number 14 is the consent agenda, and Mr. McEwen stated to me this afternoon nothing was pulled, so items A through D, council, what is your pleasure?
Mayor,
Ms. Lopez.
I recommend approval of consent items A, B, C, and D.
Second.
All right, I have a motion for approval of the consent agenda A through D by Mr. Alfrey. No, excuse me, by Ms. Lopez, second by Mr. Alfrey, right? Okay. Those, and discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes. Item 16 is resolution number 3773. A resolution providing for a budget transfer from the prior year surplus of $41,033 to the airport fund capital projects budget for the fuel farm improvement project. This is item number 16. We have Miss Marilyn Hively and Mike Odell, the new finance director of the airport. Welcome. So do you want to get an update on the item?
Sure.
Okay.
Good
And
evening,
welcome
Madam Mayor.
back.
Thank you.
I thought you retired. Now you're coming back.
Well, I am now officially, this is my last day as interim director of finance. Yes.
Okay.
We've heard that before.
Yeah, we heard that before.
Yeah, you've heard it before. You just can't get rid of me. I love
I
this
know.
place so much.
Oh, thank you. We love to have you here.
But anyway, it was Mike's first day today, so I thought maybe I would do this for him as my parting gift to him.
All right.
So at our June 27th meeting at the Melbourne Airport Authority, the authority approved the final change order to the fuel farm improvement project with Canaveral Construction. And along with approving the final change order, that we need to increase the budget to cover those funds for $41,032. And from prior meetings, I'm sure that you'll recall that the airport has had two projects running concurrently. Our federal inspection station, which we call our FIS, and our fuel farm project. And during the initial project that we had in our scope of services for the FIS, a new generator, that's the word, a new generator for the FIS to maintain safety and security at all times when the FIS is open. With that, there was an assessment done of the old generator, and it was determined that it would be in satisfactory condition to be a backup generator for a fuel farm. So we had the contractor bid that out as an added scope of service for $41,033, and so that's what this project is about.
Oh, okay, thank you. Any question for Ms. Hively? All right, seeing none, this is, well, I'm surprised it's not a public hearing. Okay. So, council, what is your pleasure?
Madam
Mayor,
Mayor,
Ms. Thomas?
move for approval of the resolution number 3773.
Second.
All right, I have a motion for approval of resolution number 3773 by Ms. Thomas, second by Vice Mayor Minus. Discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And I vote aye and the motion passes.
Mayor,
Yeah, Ms. Moore.
would you like to introduce?
So, Mike, would you like to come up?
We won't bite.
Sort of, not this time.
Oh, no,
Maybe later,
don't tell him
maybe
that.
later. But
Oh my God.
Mike comes to us from the Boise Airport.
Okay.
And he is also a CPA, so I think you're going to find him, very helpful as we navigate the future of the airport.
Okay, very good. Welcome.
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 Outstanding. Great.
Yeah, thank you.
Is something wrong with the cameras?
Yes, there's something wrong with the cameras. Okay, item number 17. Let me get right to it. Item number 17, the General Employees and Special Risk Class Employees Pension Plan, which is under the Financial Services, Mr. Jeff Town.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Back in the early 1970s, the city became part of the Florida retirement system up until about 1996 when the employer contribution rates were getting a little bit out of hand. So the city decided at that point in time to close off FRS to new employees and created what's called the General Employees and Special Risk Class Employees Pension Plan. There's a mouthful for you. We continued along with that program until about 2008, and time in which the FRS employer contributions started to come back down and were more reasonable for the city to jump back into the FRS plan. So we've done that, and at that time, people that were in this General Employees and Special Risk Class Employees Risk Plan, pension plan, could either go into FRS or stay into the plan. So what's left is about 61 people in this General Employees Plan. And we've had a board, according to the ordinance that was created way back when it was first established, of 5 folks, 2 of which are employee members. So we've struggled over the years to kind of keep the employee representatives on the board because there's only 5 left, and 4 have said, no, we're not interested in doing it. And there's 1 representative that is an active employee. We also have struggled to find the citizen representatives for the board. So right now we have 2 vacancies, and it seems like it's just not going to improve. So we thought, why not try to see if there's another possibility? So we ran it by one of the pension attorneys for the city. There's no requirement that the pension board be made up the way it is. So we would like City Council's permission for the city attorney to write up an ordinance that allows for a private pension trustee to administer this plan from this point forward until the plan exhausts itself sometime way down the road. The plan is 100% funded, so it's not a matter of anything financial. It's just a matter of trying to get the right organizational structure to manage the plan going forward. Nobody else can enter this plan, so when these 65 folks or their beneficiaries are done collecting from this pension plan, then the pension plan will then dissolve at some point in time in the future. So our goal is to try to make it simplistic, go through the process of having one person or a firm would be our guest to kind of come in and take over the administration aspect of this and make it simple for the city and for the benefit of those that are still in the plan. So with that, we ask that you authorize the city attorney to draft an ordinance that would designate a professional pension plan trustee as the plan administrator for the General Employees and Special Risk Class Employees Pension Plan.
All right, thank you, Mr. Town. Any questions for Mr. Town?
Yeah, I do.
Yes,
Mr.
Ms.
Town.
Moore.
Yes.
Did we run this by the employees?
We did speak to the plan member that is Mr. Dobson and asked him what his thoughts were, and he was not opposed to the concept of doing this. But we haven't put it out to all of the members that are left because they're all retirees. As it says, there's 24 retired members. 5 active members, 4 beneficiaries, 1 member in deferred retirement option program, and 35 members who are vested deferred, who aren't drawing yet. So that will be part of the program if we go forward with this option, to let them know what the plan is, what the thought is.
Makes sense to me. It's difficult getting board members, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, Mayor, I would
Yeah.
like to make a motion.
Okay.
I would move to authorize for the city attorney to draft an ordinance that would designate a professional pension plan trustee as the plan administrator for the general employees and special risk class employees pension plan. All right.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Moore, as stated in council's package, second by Vice Mayor Minus. Discussion?
I only have one quick question.
Yes,
How
Ms. Moore.
soon will we put this into action?
As soon as Ms. Dolly can draft the, you knew that was coming, didn't you?
Yes.
As soon as she can draft the resolution and bring it back to city council. So whenever her plate frees up a little bit.
Okay.
It's not in any real rush because we just want to start planning for the future.
Okay,
Okay. All
thank
right.
you.
Any further discussion?
If I could just add.
Yes, Ms.
Part
Dolly.
of all that too will be going through an RFP process, I believe, to select who that trustee is. So it all works together.
Okay.
All right. No further discussion. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes. Item number 18 is site plan approval request, the Melbourne Grand. And this will be under community development. Ms. Cindy Dittmer.
Yes, this is a request for site plan approval to construct a total of 166 units of a multi-family apartment complex on a 20.3 acre portion of an overall 38.5 acre property. The property is located on the west side of Babcock Street, north of Lake in the Woods Drive, and south of Cinnamon Lake Cove. The property is currently zoned R2 with a cap of 6 units per acre. The applicant is proposing to develop a total of 7 3-story apartment buildings, along with a clubhouse, a maintenance building, and 4 covered garage buildings. Most of the apartments will be of 2 and 3 bedroom size, with several at a 1 bedroom size. The overall density of the project will be at 6 units per acre. The site plan, as you see before you, I wanted to point out a few things. The project will be sharing the stormwater with the Phase 1 Cinnamon Cove single-family subdivision. That's shown in blue on the site plan there. Additionally, the project will be giving 50 feet of right-of-way and constructing a extension of Cinnamon Cove Drive, which will actually connect up here to the single-family subdivision, and they'll be able to access all the way down to Lake in the Woods Drive. And additionally, the project will be granting to the city 20 feet of additional right-of-way along the south property line. And that right-of-way will be critical for the roadway alignment we've talked about previously that would go from Lipscomb over to Dairy Road. This is one area that we did need a little additional right-of-way to accomplish that. So with that, the Planning and Zoning Board did vote unanimously to recommend approval of the project, and staff would recommend approval of Site Plan SP 2018-11 based upon the findings and conditions contained in the Planning and Zoning Board memorandum.
Thank you, Ms. Dittmer. Any questions for Ms. Dittmer?
Yes.
Yeah, Ms. Lopez.
First of all, I didn't get a hard copy on this plan. Is there a reason behind that? Usually we get a hard copy in our mail.
I thought they were put on the dais this evening. We did mistakenly forget to get those out in the package. You had copies in your online package.
Yeah, okay. It's just that I like to concrete hard copy, that's all.
Okay.
But another thing is, I don't see any response from the school board. Did we notify them about this?
Yes, they're in process with the school board review right now.
Okay, but just wasn't noted. Any response from the residents during the Planning and Zoning Board
No, ma'am.
meeting? Nothing at all?
No.
The surrounding residents?
No, I believe they're probably going to be happy to have this right-of-way connecting the lake and the woods. I know that's been a concern we have heard from them before.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Mayor,
Yeah, Ms. Moore.
didn't we go through this once before? This looks really, really familiar to me. And there were some issues. Is that why it came back to planning and zoning?
No, I was looking for the dates. Council back in 2003 approved a site plan. And again,
No, it's been since 12.
in 2007. So there has been previous approvals on the property. The development of the property didn't occur.
Well, I swear that we had this before us, and we had some people from the Cinnamon Lakes area that was concerned about it, and they were concerned about getting in and getting out on roads.
Well, with the 50-foot right-of-way that they'll be granting to the city and the construction of the red portion here, the Cinnamon Cove single-family residents should be very happy with their access, because they'll be able to get out not only at their current driveway, they'll also be able to drive south at Lake in the Woods. One of the things that we've looked at over the years with engineering and in talking with DOT is that there has not been a warrant analysis that was successful to get a traffic signal on Babcock Street.
That's right. There
With
was that
some of this
discussion.
additional traffic being now directed to Lake in the Woods, it's likely that warrant could be met so that a signal.
Because I remember Councilman Lopez discussed getting out on Babcock Street, why we couldn't get a traffic signal.
You're recalling the Trillium project that's on the east side of Babcock Street.
Okay, it's very
Yes.
similar to this.
Yes, it's an apartment complex, and there were residents from Cinnamon Cove who came out and spoke against the Trillium project because of the traffic issues.
Okay,
So
thank you
this
for
is a
that.
different property.
Okay.
Same issues, but this project will actually help the traffic flow in the area.
Okay, thank you. Because it just looks so familiar as to what they wanted to do here. And I know there was discussion on the amount of traffic that's on Babcock right now, if we're putting more traffic on Babcock without getting a signal. Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Any other comments? All right. This is quasi judicial. Any disclosures? Seeing none, this is a public hearing. Do I have any sign-up sheets? I'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council. What is your pleasure?
Mayor,
Vice Mayor Minus.
I move for approval of site plan request SP 2018-11 based upon the findings and conditions contained in the Planning and Zoning Board memorandum.
Second.
All right, I have a motion for approval of the site plan request SP 2018-11 by Vice Mayor Minus, second by Ms. Thomas. Discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes. Item number 19 is ordinance number 2018-40, the Florida Counseling Services, Ms. Allison Dolly.
Yes, ma'am. An ordinance of the City of Melbourne, Brevard County, Florida, providing for the repeal of ordinance number 2012-26, amending the official zoning map as it relates to the general zoning ordinance number 2005-120 by granting a conditional use to allow private hospital use on a 0.47 plus or minus acre portion of an overall 0.78 plus or minus acre developed site, Zone C1A, Professional Offices and Services District, located on the east side of Audubon Drive, north of Avenue B and south of Avenue A, 105 to 107 and 109 to 111 Audubon Drive. Providing for conditions of approval, providing that the conditional use granted herein may be revoked by City Council if the conditions of approval are not met, providing that the property shall be designated on the official zoning map by the symbol CC1A, providing an effective date and providing an adoption schedule.
Thank you, Ms. Dolly. This is under Community Development. Ms. Cindy Dittmer.
Yes, this is a request for a first reading of an ordinance granting a conditional use to allow a hospital use on a .47 acre developed portion of an overall .78 acre site located on the east side of Audubon Drive, north of Avenue B and south of Avenue A. The property is currently zoned C1A with an office professional future land use. The Florida Counseling Centers is requesting to operate a private hospital for a detoxification center in conjunction with their existing offices that currently are already existing there that front onto US 1. The Florida Counseling Centers already provides addiction treatment in those offices that are currently there on site. The facility that's being proposed will operate in a very similar manner as to a hospital, in that there will be medical staff on site 24 hours a day, 7 days a week that will be monitoring the patients. Additionally, the patients will stay within the premises during the entire time of their treatment, and their treatment is typically anywhere from 14 to 21 days. All of the hospital uses will be located within the buildings, and the patients will be within the gated courtyard area of the proposed buildings. They also will be, this is a site plan showing their current offices at front on US 1, and all of the entrance for the patients will be up here next to the front office building area. There won't be any activity on the Audubon sign with the exception of deliveries and things that may come in more of what would be the back entrance. Within a 500-foot radius of the property, there is a mix of uses that varies from offices, parking lots, along with single and multifamily development that's in the area. There's a variety of zoning districts, C1A, RP, which is residential professional, along with R1AA, which is your single family zoning that exists in the area. During the August 2nd meeting with the Planning and Zoning Board, there was one resident that spoke against the proposed hospital, and the Planning and Zoning Board did vote 4-1 to recommend approval of this request. And staff recommends approval ordinance number 2018-40 based upon the findings and conditions contained in the Planning and Zoning Board memorandum.
All right, thank you, Ms. Dittmer. Any questions for Ms. Dittmer?
I will have some comments after you have a public hearing.
Yes, of course, yes.
I mean, we'd have someone sign up.
Yes, we do have some
Okay.
sign-up sheets. Ms. Dittmer, on the 39 parking lot, the parking spaces, is that
Yes.
going to include the employees too?
Yes, the existing parking there will accommodate all of the proposed uses for the employees and the number of beds of the patients there.
Okay, thank you. All right, this is quasi-judicial. Do I have any sign-up sheets or?
No, disclosures, right?
Disclosures?
Yeah, no, I have a disclosure. I spoke to the contractor today, Mr. Warner. Had some questions regarding, this kind of project. You just want to make sure everything, your I's are crossed, or your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed. So I had a conversation with him about the back being gated and closed off from the homes and stuff. So I want to just make that disclosure.
Okay.
Madam Mayor.
Yeah, Mr. Thomas?
For full disclosure, Mike Roncesvalli and I grew up together. Our parents were in the ministry together, so I have that disclosure. In addition, I had a phone call from him, I believe it was on the 5th of June, telling me the original concept of what he's wanting to do. There were some zoning questions that came up that I really wasn't sure about, so referred him to Cindy Dittmer for her to resolve. So, and then also the email we just received from him, I think on 23 August. So those are mine.
Okay. All right, Vice Mayor Minus?
I received several phone calls. We're missing each other back and forth. Mr. Chris, I guess it was Warner, about the property. I went there several times, but I kept missing him. So also received an email. I don't know if everyone else received it also from the psychologist of the property, and I replied back to him. Back to him specifically. So those are my disclosures.
All right. Anyone else? I have a disclosure of August 21st, received an email by Dr. Mike, I think it's Ron Sisaville. And also, I drove around the project too. So, anyone else?
Excuse me, I received an email, but I did not respond to it.
Okay. This is a public hearing, and I do have some sign-up sheets, and it is Mike. If you could help me pronounce your name.
Ronsis Valley.
Oh my gosh,
Ronsis Valley.
Ronsis Valley. Okay, very good. If you want to come up and make some comments about your project.
Sure. If I could just share briefly my heart and our heart for this project. I'm a homegrown boy. I was born and raised in Brevard County. I went away for a decade to get educated, and actually came back here to serve this community. We need. There's a lot of help that we need in Brevard County to help people that are struggling. So, what we found very quickly was that there's a huge gap in our entire county in Melbourne for the treatment of addictions. And if you've not read the papers or seen the articles, it's just crazy what's happening with addictions, not only in our community, but nationwide. So our heart is to do something very special on that property. There's not another place in the county that you can go to get that kind of treatment. So in an effort to try to help people get better, make our communities safer, and help people get healthy, we want to provide that treatment there on that property. I want to differentiate between what we're wanting to do and what's a sober house or a community living situation. It's a totally different thing. Community living means you have guys that are struggling with addictions or females. They live there. There might be a house manager. Lots of times there's a lot of drug use around those houses or not. People don't like them in their communities. I think there's actually one in this neighborhood, if I'm not mistaken, already. We're not associated with it. This is totally different in that these are people that are going to be in a facility that's locked down. They can't come and go as they want, and they're getting medical treatment. Just today, I had to send a guy out that if we had not put him somewhere, he would have probably had a seizure, going through withdrawal from alcohol, and could have been hurt very badly. We don't have anywhere to send these people right now. So we want to provide that place. They'll be monitored by nurses. They'll be monitored by medical doctors. We have an addictionologist who's also a psychiatrist on our staff ready to head this program. She'll be there managing the entire process. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys about this and welcome any questions you might have about us and our heart in doing it.
Okay. Any questions?
Mayor?
Yeah, Vice Mayor Minus.
Okay, just ask, you said you have one psychiatrist for the whole facility?
Yeah, so our psychiatrist will be the medical director. So that medical director will then direct PAs, nurse practitioners, psych techs, the people that actually work with folks to take their blood pressure, take their vital signs, make sure they're going to be able to come off of whatever they're on in a safe way and not be hurt.
Okay, so you want, my concern was that with this being just one with all of the 16 units, that this one psychiatrist would be on call 24/7. But that's not the case. But you're saying the PAs and the CNAs and everybody else. So okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So she's just the overall person. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Thank you.
I have a question. You have partnered with Journey Pure.
Yes, ma'am.
What is this company?
Journey Pure is a addiction organization that has facilities throughout the Southeast. So Journey Pure, I'm proud to be a part of that family. Now they do treatment in a very ethical way. There's a lot of people that are in this business for the wrong reasons, and they're making a lot of money, doing a lot of things to try to exploit people that are in need of help. Journey Pure is an organization. I can get you the numbers on how many facilities. There's probably 15 or 16 facilities that they have around the Southeast, and their heart is to invest in communities. So they're not a national brand. They're not like guys that are in every city they invest in community. They pick a community and they invest in that community, and that's what they've done with Melbourne. They want to work with us to see Melbourne get healthier.
All right, so it's a 30-day treatment plan. with these individuals?
It's
Or does it play, or
it's a tough question because the whole field is sort of morphing and changing. Between 7 and 21, 28 days, it kind of depends on their insurance policy. Obvious, so these guys are all insured. I should have told you that.
Okay.
There's certain populations that get treatment in certain different contexts. Like we do have a place in the area that would take folks that don't have insurance and can't pay. Our facility will be different in that everyone there will either pay cash or they have private insurance that will cover their treatment.
Okay. All right. Any other questions?
Mayor?
Yeah, Ms. Lopez.
And how much would it cost one patient to be treated there on a daily basis?
So I can tell you what insurance typically pays for it. They pay between $700 and $1,000 per day for that treatment, and so that's the medical kind of detoxification. There's several different levels of treatment. So you've got detox, residential, partial hospitalization, intensive outpatient, and outpatient. So at the highest level of care would be the detoxification, which would be similar to treatment that you would get at a hospital or someplace where people are in medical need and they need medical monitoring.
Will they be getting any medications during that period of time of detoxation?
Yeah, and that's the whole idea is if you take a drug like Xanax, lots of people take Xanax, right? There's a percentage of the population that take benzodiazepines like Xanax. If you take Xanax for a long time, over a period of time, and then you quit taking them cold turkey, you're very likely to have some sort of medical condition, probably a seizure, and it can kill you. So we take them into a detox facility and you administer medications on a taper so that their brain can kind of adjust to not having the medication there, so that 7 days later, 10 days later, 13 days later, they can function without that drug in their body. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's really sad.
Oh my
That we
goodness.
have to have places like this, but it's needed, definitely.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Minus.
Okay, another question. How can someone find you? It's not, you don't go through the court system or anything. I think I read that you don't, they don't go through. I remember like for the young kids, it was like through the boat program,
Yes,
beachside.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
But you don't do anything like that. So how would they find you? Are there referrals or from a doctor?
We get
to
lots
you?
of our referrals from doctors, attorneys, pastors, and self-referred. If our best marketing is the work that we do. We get most of our clients from the people that we've already done treatment with.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, any other questions?
Ma'am.
All right, seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Sheldon Rutherford.
Afternoon, Council. My name's Sheldon Rutherford. I live at 424 Audubon, which is the south end of Audubon Drive that this property is going to be going on. My major concerns are we've already got a neighborhood that's only 15 square blocks. We've already got one halfway house for alcohol and drug people who are trying to get back into society. We also already have a women's shelter, women and children's shelter in our neighborhood. We also have the River Palms Hotel, which is where almost every person who comes out of Sharps that lives anywhere in Melbourne wants to get back to Melbourne, that's where they go, who usually are finding their first drugs and their first alcohol right back. How much more do you want to put on this neighborhood? We are the homeowners. We are the people who are paying our property taxes, who have our home values to think about. I know you guys don't have to worry about that. We do. All we're asking, we've done our fair share to help the community, to help people who do need it. And I completely agree, they do need it. But we have had enough in our neighborhood. We are to our limit. We're only 15 square blocks. Please don't add another issue to our neighborhood to bring our property values down. Again, a few of you have driven through the road too, or driven behind the facility. You know as well as I do, 2 cars cannot pass on that road without 1 car pulling into the grass. You're now gonna have delivery trucks coming down Audubon Drive. That's what we've been fighting since day one. I've been there 32 years. no delivery trucks on a road where 2 cars can't even pass. 2 standard cars can't pass without somebody pulling over. Now you're going to add a delivery truck. All I ask is that you just ask the hospital to please be somewhere else, not in our neighborhood. That's all. We've got enough in our neighborhood. Please don't bring it down anymore.
Mr. Rutherford, do you have issues with the halfway house that's in your neighborhood?
Not really, no.
No.
We have a lot of bicycle traffic because, most of them are trying to work and, of course, they can't drive cars. They've lost their licenses. So we have a lot of bicycle traffic and don't really have an issue with them.
Okay.
Don't have any issues at all with the women's center at all. Actually, it's kind of great. Love hearing the kids play, all the things going on. Halloween's a blast now. Used to only get 5 or 6 kids. Now we get 15, 20 from the, from the women's center and the women's shelter, women and children's shelter. Not going to complain. All I'm asking is every little thing like this that comes along, all it does is take the whole property values down for the whole neighborhood. Again, we're only 15 square blocks, so 3 by 5 basically, between Babcock Street, US 1, Brevard Drive, and Cherry Street.
All right,
So,
thank
thank
you,
you.
Sheldon. Next is Eric Ellebrock.
Eric V. Ellebrock, 1948 Tyler Avenue. Formerly resided at 415 Audubon Street for many, many years. That was a great apartment. I love living back up in there. I've spent over 10 years working for Circles of Care. The majority of that time was under contract up there at Sharps. I also worked in the Twin Rivers Detox Unit. I worked in emergency services, and I worked on the psych tech. I don't have to tell you how many times I've came in front of this council to tell you about the problems with an addiction in this community, the heroin addiction and so forth and so on. God, do we need a detox? There's problems here though, but yes, we certainly need a detox. The first problem that jumps in my mind is most drug addicts and or alcoholics don't have insurance, okay? Now, there was a question about referrals, how these people, there's a thing called the Myers Act, okay? Very similar to the Baker Act, Form 52, where the police get a person who's obviously has drug or alcohol issues and they need to go to detox, and they Myers Act them. They involuntarily commit them for 72 hours to a treatment facility. Is your treatment facility going to take Myers Acts?
No, sir.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you?
No, sir.
I'm sorry? No? Okay. They're not going to take Myers Acts, so that's not going to have an impact. Okay? I really think that's the issue, man. The majority of the people that need the treatment aren't going to be able to afford it. Here's the deal. There's no dispute that when you have a heroin addiction, alcohol addiction, and Xanax or minor stuff, but the alcohol and all that can kill you when you withdraw. 72 hours is the normal part. And Lord knows, I've seen it and I've worked it, and it's pretty nasty. Okay, people go through some really hellacious things. And even with Valium, Librium, and various other medical treatments, some of them die. Okay, depending on the length of the addiction. I think that, the medical treatment, you have a psychiatrist overall, but you're going to have medical doctors, of course, to supervise it. And a good RN, a good PA is going to be able to deal with that. But here's the thing. I was kind of under the impression this was going to be a Baker Act receiving facility on a private nature. Of course, it's not going to be that. It's going to be a detox. So you're going to be dealing with people who are strictly diagnosed with addiction as opposed to dual diagnosis. Are you going to take dual diagnosis? Yes. So you're going to be having people, I'm sorry, yes?
Yes.
Yeah, you're going to have people who are diagnosed both with a mental health disorder, say schizophrenia, and addiction, okay? And we all know that there's a need for treatment of this nature. However, when you're dealing with dual diagnosis, you can get people who are incredibly friggin' violent, okay? And already, we have an issue with the Baker Act receiving facility when they need, they're on airport property, but there's a financial agreement for when they need police assistance, they call MPD. Are these people going to be able to assure us that they're going to not need to call MPD? Or how often are they going to have to call MPD to deal with people who not only have addiction issues, but have mental health issues? So we need to work out some agreement. Don't get me wrong. My God, we need to talk. I support this, dude, because we need it. However, I want to make sure that a certain amount of people that he takes in, that they take into this facility, are indigent, that they treat them on the free. Okay? Now let's get back to the neighborhood. Okay? Lord knows, back when I lived there, I had a great time and everything. Back when I lived there were 2 hotels. Okay? The Best Western and the Holiday Inn. The Holiday Inn is now the Car Lot, and the Best Western is now the River Palms. But let me tell you, I had a great time, and there were some parties and so forth and so on. But the majority of the residents and all there are rentals. Okay? So when it gets down to property values, the apartment I paid back at 415 Audubon, back in the day, I paid $175 a month for it, and now they're getting $6. I don't think they're going to go down. I don't think it's going to have a serious impact on the retail, because, again, the majority of residents back in that area are rentals. And I really don't think the landlord people own that are going to adjust the rent for that. So I don't think it's going to have an impact. But I have to say this, okay, with caveats. We need to support this. This needs to happen. However, the caveats are, okay, I don't want anybody making a fortune off this. Right?
All right, wrap it up, Eric.
Can I ask for an extension?
How long?
3 minutes?
No.
2?
No.
1?
Okay.
Do I have any support?
Yeah, do you have a support for
1 minute.
Okay.
All right.
Well, here again, to get right back down to it. All right. The man has some great words about, there's some unethical people and so forth and so on. But I would like to see a percentage of the people that are treated here have no insurance, because that's the people that are dying on the street. That's the people we see off of Croton Road passed out. That's the people we see at River Palms rolling in the gutters. Okay, they don't have insurance, man. They don't have cash because they've either smoked it or put it up their arms. Okay? I don't know where they're going to get the money for this, but I think they need to eat it and take a little less profit. But I can't think of unless somebody wants to volunteer to put it in a property off a River Road or someplace. I think we should put this out in Vieira. You think anybody's going to go for this out in Vieira? Oh God, come on, be real. We need this. We sorely need this. However, I don't want this to be like the Bellevue up in Cocoa. I want this to be an honest-to-God detox, okay, where somebody can go in there for 72 hours and get clean.
All right, thank you, Mr. Alabrock. Next is Adam Wardner. I think it's a Warner.
Hey, Council. I'm just the contractor of the job, so if you have any questions, I'm happy
Name
to
and
answer.
city, please.
Adam Warner, 1649 Avocado.
Okay, so
Melbourne,
you're the
Florida.
contractor of this, to build this,
Yes.
the addition to the building that's behind?
No addition. We're staying within the existing footprint.
Oh,
but
okay, all right. So you're gonna gut the place and,
Absolutely.
okay, I saw it as I was driving around. All right. Yeah, Mr. Alfrey.
Yeah, I have a quick question, and I know we discussed this already, but, one thing I wanted to express with you is that if you could go over what's going to be different about this as opposed to a halfway house or something.
Yeah. To give you a little background, Betty's well-versed in our work. We mostly are primarily in the Eau Gallie Art District. We've taken multiple houses under our wing and saved them. We just finished saving a house that was built in the 1900s at a financial loss, but it was worth saving. And I'm honored to be a part of the team. I see what they're doing. I'm really excited. We also own an assisted living facility in Rockledge. So even though it's totally separate, I kind of understand more than just a contractor might come in on how it needs to function, be locked in that type of situation. So I think it's an improvement to the area, and I understand the local residents' hesitance with it. If it was coming into the Eau Gallie Art District, we have some properties there that I would love to nominate that it could move in, and it would be a vast improvement from what we have. The city did allow us to do a 10-foot fence, and I think with that, and then with the property facing US 1, it'll be an improvement for what they've had to put up with when we first started touring the property. I can't say for sure, but if I was going to go somewhere to buy drugs, I'm confident that over the last few years on that property, that's happened, and it will not be the case once they take ownership and we're able to do the improvements that are there. So hopefully that, with that, we also own a real estate brokerage and manage about 30 doors locally. And what they're going to be able to do and enforce and make sure happens on the property as a landlord or a property manager, they have so much more power than us. You know, we can know that it's happening. We can call the police as just a traditional residential landlord situation. And quite frankly, your hands are so tied with what Mike and Journey Pure is putting in there. There's no screwing around. It'll be clean. He can come back up and touch on the people that are in the facility. They're not walking traffic. They don't really contribute to the neighborhood. You won't see them. In fact, they've already been there, and now they just are expanding. So hopefully that answers questions.
Yeah, Vice Mayor Minus.
Yeah, just want to ask, it's going to be basically like a little compound, if you will, enclosed. Is that I think I read it was opaque fence?
I can't.
Is it opaque or, I don't know, wooden or
I
something?
think it has to be.
I think I read that.
Yeah, I read that too. It's one of the.
Yeah, so it's going to be basically like a, like a little compound, if you will.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it will be totally enclosed, right?
Yeah. Mike and I were just discussing, trying to problem solve and meet the needs of the community and concerns that they have, is that there's no reason that some of our parking spots with the assisted living facility, we've got a designated parking spot, and it's not a big delivery truck. They come in, they have to fill the meds. It's a Hobbs marked vehicle. It's a little medication. I mean, it's like the world's smallest vehicle, but something that we could do is just put a specific parking spot for the medication that comes and goes a couple times a day, and then also do the same for maybe food and stuff like that, so that it's not doing anything to affect the flow on Autobahn whatsoever.
Okay, that would be great.
Yeah.
Because that was my concern about delivery trucks and add it to the neighborhood. So if we can do an alternative, that would be great.
Okay.
Yeah, Ms. Moore.
I have to say, this council was, I believe all of us, were, maybe not, were involved with Frog Bones when we were doing the shooting range. And we had a lot of people that come before us. So I want to clear up something. There was a comment made that it's not real important because it's a rental area anyway in that 15 square blocks. That's not a fact. There are many homeowners in there because we as a council dealt with them. Sure, there are some rentals, but that's not the case on all of them. And I think what is happening is, and no, you do a good job, Adam, so this is nothing there. It's just these people are feeling now this is number 3 that's coming into their area. Where is it going to stop? And that's what they're concerned about. Do we need a facility like this? Absolutely. But is this the only place for it? Since we have 15 square blocks, that's all, and this is number 3. So this is what people are concerned about. So that's basically my thought. Are we dumping here because it's convenient and because we think that this is all rental property? There's nothing wrong with being a renter in a house, but it's not all rental property. There are many, many homeowners in there.
Yeah, ma'am.
Yeah, Mr. Alfrey.
Well, first off, I would say nobody really wants any kind of addiction place near their home. I mean, but it's a big need. I mean, we have to face a crisis that's among us. And I had big concerns, and I appreciate you going through this. But really, we couldn't stop some of these houses coming from South Florida if we wanted to. I mean, through the HEPA laws. Am I right, City Attorney? I mean, if someone technically wanted to open a house, another one, we really couldn't stop them. Am I correct?
There are protections under the ADA, yes, that could, fair housing, and also the ADA that could be pursued. And so you really need to look at this as a health facility, as opposed to the type of people that are being treated there.
So absolutely. So saying that is, what you're getting here is you're getting someone that's putting something together for a need, and it's a well-devised plan. So I'm for it because I've had family I've had quite a few families that's had alcohol addiction, and I'm not afraid to say it. And, you know, these people need help. There's a point we have to be compassionate and understand that, you know, I do know Adam, and I know they will bend over backwards to make sure that no one even knows they're there. So that's where I stand on it.
Madam Mayor?
And yeah, Mr. Thomas.
Yeah, a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week secure detox facility. And also the quality of the building. Obviously, I don't think there's any way that this is going to drive down property values. I think that's a misnomer there. But again, this is something that's badly needed. I think the staff that I know Dr. Roncesvalles is gonna hire, they're gonna treat people with compassion, they're gonna have empathy for them, they're gonna help them get the treatment that they need so they can re-engage and get back in society. And this is vital that we approve this tonight so that we can really help people. And so I'm for this.
Mayor? No, wait a minute, Ms. Moore. Vice Mayor Minus.
I also agree. You raised the flag about the property value, but I don't think that's going to be a problem. It's probably going to enhance, if anything, the property value because you're renovating and you're just making it all new again, if you will. So I don't think that'll be a problem. The other issue brought up, another speaker brought up about the indigent. You know, I'd like to just visit that to see. Like I said, everyone doesn't have insurance. So if there is a percentage that could be designated, you know, I mean, there's something to think about. So, but the property value, I think it's going to probably boost it, if anything.
All right, any other? Oh, Ms. Moore.
Yeah, I'm not against this project. Well, definitely, we need it. It's just that it seems that this area has been this big magnet and is drawing this into their area, and they're not happy about this. Have you met with any of the property owners?
Yes, ma'am. In fact, there's a really cute little adobe house right around the corner. They had a letter ready when we went toward the P&Z board. Mike and I had the opportunity to go sit down and have a cup of coffee with them. You could kind of see them, just the stress go away because they were excited that we're going to face US 1, that the clients can't check themselves in and out kind of willy-nilly.
Yep.
Yeah.
They were interested to know that we already have the clients on site and they've never interacted with them. And I think that's the big difference between what people fear and what it is. It was great to sit down with them. They still came to the meeting. There was also another couple that showed up that we were able to talk to before, kind of explain what we do or what Mike does. And then there's still a gentleman that owns property locally. But again, the amount of money that we're putting into the property, there's some nice houses in there. It'll be at that level or above what's there. It will not be an eyesore. And if this were not to pass, and this is, it would just go back to a lower end rental that, you know, the owners are maybe not taking the best care of. So I think of the options that are presented, this is far and away, it sinks a ton of money into the property for improvement that'll help property values locally. And if it's not, somebody's going to just acquire it, you know, fill it full of you know, $600-700 a month places, and hopefully it's the landlord that takes care of the stuff. But if not, we're left with the pieces and draining resources with police reporting. I mean, the stuff that we have to deal with in O'Galley right now.
Okay, Ms. Moore.
I don't expect you to rework your business because you've already had to set when you're doing your business as to the number of clients you'll have, basically the money that will be coming in, et cetera, et cetera. Would I like to see help for people who don't have insurance? Absolutely. But I don't expect you to change.
Right, I will bring you up.
I don't expect you to change your business plan on this. All right. So that's my say.
All right. Ms. Lopez and then Ms. Thomas.
Yes, I agree with Council Member Alfrey. It's needed in our area. And also, the patients will stay in the facility. They're not going to be allowed to go into the neighborhood. So I feel very comfortable, and I think the neighborhood should feel safe too. So I will support this.
All right, Ms. Thomas.
I just want to say I think this is badly needed. We absolutely need this kind of hospital within our city and definitely in Brevard County. So I definitely support this project. I too am not going to dictate your business model. However, I think it would be nice if you did find a way to put a percentage aside that you could maybe help some people that were not paying customers. But I support this project.
All right. Anyone else? All right. I have one more person to come up, and then you can come back up and make comments. All right. Jackie Haylinger. I apologize if I didn't pronounce it. Oh, okay. So, name and city.
That's my neighbor, by the way, but she's shy.
Okay.
This gentleman said he used to live on Audubon Drive, but that's been a while because I don't know you. You're not my neighbor. No. And I've been there
All
a
right.
couple of years.
You can direct your if you want to bring that microphone closer to you, okay.
So I want to speak for my own street. And we have more people in here that live on Audubon Drive.
Okay.
And I did research this project a little bit.
Ma'am, you're going to have to direct your comments here.
Oh, sorry. Florida Counseling Centers used to be located on Palm Bay Road. I was also in this meeting one day when a gentleman spoke up and he asked for the council to approve a medical marijuana facility. And the council said you wouldn't do it. So I'm starting to wonder what's the difference between a place where people have prescriptions from physicians to get their medical marijuana versus a detox center. The detox center is classified supposedly as a hospital. It really isn't a hospital, because if it was a hospital, it would have been located inside of Holmes Regional, Melbourne Regional, or Rockledge Regional. As the councilwoman stated, our street, everything's being dumped on. Our neighborhood, everything's being dumped on. We have churches, we have Airbnbs, we have places for women and children, we have places for men, we have a gun range, we have a hotel on the front street. Where does it end, is what I'm asking. I'm all for the project. I work in the mental health field. I know what the need is, just like somebody else stated. Everybody knows somebody that has an addiction issue. We all know that. I did go online and found this. So, when you come to this meeting, you feel skeptical. Like, is anybody going to truly listen to me? I'm only one homeowner. I work every day. I pay my taxes. My neighbor is a friend. She was looking for a place to live. There was a vacant home. I recommended it to her. We love our neighbors. We all get along really well. We all do what we can to keep the place looking nice. But when I went online, where the river meets the road, Journey Pure today also announced plans to open a residential treatment facility in the coming months adjacent to the Florida Counseling Center's outpatient center in Melbourne, Florida. This new facility will serve men and women who will benefit from addiction treatment services provided in a residential environment through daily group and individual therapy sessions. So how do they know this is going to happen if this stuff needs to be voted on? So you read a little further more. In addition to the residential facility to be added in Melbourne, Florida, who said it's going to be added? That's why we're having this meeting tonight, right?
Right.
We're trying to decide.
You have first reading and second reading.
So
okay.
This sounds like a done deal to me.
Until we
I don't
vote.
agree with it, not because I don't want people to get treated. Yes, I am worried about people with dual diagnosis on my street. The streets are very narrow. Now, when you back out, you got to be very careful. Backing out to my driveway, I have to be careful. It's very narrow. There are people, there are cars, people speeding through all hours of the day. The neighborhood is changing. I'm really worried that the person who's going to end up on that street living there is going to be me and the rentals. People like Mr. Sheldon Rutherford, he's been there 30 years. Mm-hmm. He's middle-aged. Why does he need to stay there? He doesn't. He could sell and he could leave. The house just sold next door to me. I was so happy. This gentleman put in significant amount of money in the property and he bought the house. That was really awesome. I was so happy. But this kind of stuff doesn't make me feel optimistic about my neighborhood. Should I be pessimistic? Should I look for something else? Should I go somewhere else? What should I do? I don't know what to do. I love my neighborhood. It's so nice. That's the whole reason we bought it. I'm honestly asking you guys to reconsider this. Yes, it's needed, but a project like this, they're going to be bringing in people from all over the country. The president is allocating money toward the project. It's not going to be necessarily local people. Yeah, it's needed. We all know that. let's do it, but can we do it somewhere else? That's all I'm asking.
Okay.
And before you make up your mind, consider how it's going to affect somebody like me. I want to live there,
Okay.
but we'll see.
All right.
So please think about that. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. All right, that is the last of the public comments. And Mike, if you want to come up and say a few things that have been mentioned before.
Yes, ma'am. So first I want to say I appreciate all the comments by the neighbors, and I understand what it must be like to live in a neighborhood and not know what's going to go on there. So I get that and have a lot of empathy for it. I want the record to be really clear. Our goal is to be great neighbors. That's our goal. We're going to make this place look so much better than it looks right now. When you ride down Audubon, these places, the places that we're looking at don't look good. I mean, they're not places that I think you'd feel like, man, I'm proud of these houses in my neighborhood. We're going to pump lots of money into these places, and it will all face US 1. So it'll actually, we're going to landscape on the other side of that fence. Our goal would be to make it, when you're strolling down Audubon, that our stuff feels like it's US 1, and you're strolling down Audubon at beautiful landscaping and plants and hedges and things that feel nice. We want to be really good neighbors. So far, we've already been good neighbors. We've been treating people with addictions on the US 1 property right next door, right adjacent, for 2.5 years. We've already had people struggling actively with addiction there on property. Never had the police called, never had any kind of issue that someone would in the neighborhood would struggle. I don't even think the neighborhood knows we're there. That's the kind of treatment that we're providing. And we are confident that we can do this in such a way that it protects these guys and maybe even insulates them a little bit from all that US 1, stuff. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. Our heart is to make it more of a neighborhood than it feels like currently. We have sat down with neighbors, and almost 100% of the neighbors that we've sat down with have, once we've talked about our vision, what it's going to look like, how it's going to feel to walk down Audubon, they're happy we're there because they've had problems with people living in these houses already. They're happy we're going to be there because it's going to help them feel like they're insulated a little bit. And then I just want to say just brief words about the kind of patients that we're treating. Dual diagnosis patients, I want to clarify what that is. We would not have someone that had like a major mental illness on property. That's just not our specialty. That's not what we do. So schizophrenia or some sort of psychotic disorder, that's not the place that they would be. By dual diagnosis, what we mean is someone that's struggling with an addiction and anxiety. Someone that's struggling with an addiction and depression. So that's, think about it. You walk down the mall and 20% of the people passing you have an anxiety disorder. So it's not like these are people that have needles in their arms, and these are our neighbors. These are people that work at Harris and people that work at the Space Center and the airport and lawyers and doctors. These are people that need us and our help as a community to get them healthy. So I wanted to just make sure that I was clear, and I'll address your concerns directly. We've been in Brevard County for over a decade, treating addictions and mental health. We have another office in Suntree. We don't have an office in Palm Bay, but we do have another clinic in Suntree. We've been here over a decade, and since our inception, we treat people pro bono. There's a percentage of people that we take in, and we treat them. So a lot of times we try to get them to pay something, whether it's $5, $10 for an individual counseling session, something. Why? Because if you've got skins in the game, you tend to get better, a little easier, right? You don't take it for granted. But that is absolutely our heart. That is something that we already do, and we're prepared to do that on this property as well. So, thank you.
Anything else? All right, thank you. I will close the public hearing and bring it back to council. What is your pleasure?
Mayor.
Vice Mayor Minus.
I move for approval of ordinance number 2018-40, based upon the findings and conditions contained in the Planning and Zoning Board memorandum.
Second.
All right, I have a motion for approval of ordinance number 2018-40 by Vice Mayor Minus, second by Mr. Thomas. Discussion?
Mayor,
Ms. Lopez.
I would like to see if you can bring us your plan of what it's going to look like if we have a second reading on it, please.
Ms. Lopez, what kind of plan?
The layout, what it's going to look like.
Physically, or, because there's pictures in here, right?
Good to know.
I mean, there's a
I
layout.
didn't see it.
Yeah, everything's inside.
The layout's on the screen that's on right now.
But it's in
You
there,
want to
yeah.
know what the outside is going to look like then? Maybe get a
It's
rendering?
not on mine.
Right there.
Yeah, but I would like to see an actual picture. This is like a diagram. I would like to see the actual picture, if at all possible, what it's going to look like. If you have it ready.
Yeah, when's our next,
September 12th.
okay,
next
September
one,
12th.
Engineering will be far enough along that we could do an elevation.
That'd be great. If there's a second reading, though.
Yeah, it will be. Mr. Hellebrock, you're out of order, yelling out of the seat. Okay, so my discussion is, I definitely support this project. It is well needed. And the way it's gated, and it's secured, and the fact that the Women's Center is in the area, not creating problems, and the halfway house. So it's well needed. So I definitely support it.
Be a three-peat.
All right. We ready to vote?
Vote.
All right. Those in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed? And I vote aye, and the motion passes. All right, item number 20, ordinance number 2018-41, and ordinance number 28-42, FPNL Sarno Transmission Substation. Miss Allison Dolly.
Yes, ma'am. Ordinance number 2018-41, an ordinance of the City of Melbourne, Brevard County, Florida, amending the official zoning map as it relates to the general zoning ordinance number 2005-120 by changing the zoning classification from R2T, Planned Residential Development for Mobile Home Parks, to RA, Residential Holding District, on a 0.2 plus or minus acre portion of an overall 30.56 plus or minus acre property located on the south side of Aurora Road, east of Interstate 95 and west of John Rhodes Boulevard, 4735 Aurora Road, providing an effective date and providing an adoption schedule. Ordinance number 2018-42. An ordinance of the City of Melbourne, Brevard County, Florida, amending the official zoning map as it relates to the general zoning ordinance number 2005-120 by granting a conditional use to allow the expansion of a public utility service facility on a 3.93 plus or minus acre portion of a partially developed 30.56 plus or minus acre property zoned RA, Residential Holding District, located on the south side of Aurora Road, east of Interstate 95, and west of John Rhodes Boulevard, 4735 Aurora Road, providing for the site plan approval, providing for conditions of approval, providing that the conditional use granted herein may be revoked by the City Council if the conditions of approval are not met, providing that the property shall be designated on the official zoning map by the symbol CRA, providing an effective date and providing an adoption schedule.
Thank you, Ms. Dolly. This is under Community Development. Ms. Cindy Dittmer.
Yes, these are the first readings ordinances changing the zoning from R2T to RA on a 0.2 acre portion of the property, and also granting a conditional use to allow a public utility service use along with a site plan approval on a 3.93 acre portion of an overall partially developed 30.56 acre property. The property is located on the south side of Aurora Road, east of Interstate 95 and west of John Rhodes Boulevard. Currently, the property is zoned R2T and CR1A with a low-density future land use classification. As you see on the screen before you this evening, there's a very small piece that FPNL recently acquired. That's what's being rezoned from R2T to RA, which RA is the zoning over the whole parcel. The conditional use will apply to what's outlined in the red here, to the overall 30-acre parcel that you see there. So the rezoning and the conditional use, two different actions. Basically, FP&L is seeking to approve an expansion of their substation in this area to create additional public utilities for our area. The proposal, what you have before you on the screen this evening, this light blue area is currently where the current substation already exists. The expansion is occurring west, so I-95 is to your west here. So the expansion actually is happening even further away from the residential properties. It's tucked back up against the interstate. The new area will include the improvements in the red area, as well as stormwater retention for the facility and a paved driveway that'll access both of the existing and the new FP&L substations. There'll also be a 12-foot masonry wall, if you can see the sort of green outline all the way around the property. So all of that will be screened with a 12-foot wall. And that's sort of the idea of what you're going to see from the exterior. So you won't, as you're driving, well, nobody can really drive out here, but you won't really see the substation facility, within that area. As the project's currently designed, the project is going to need a variance for setbacks, a setback from the interstate. So they've actually moved it closer to the interstate than our city code allows, but staff believe that's a good thing. It's not impacting anybody on the interstate side. And additionally, they're going to need a variance. Their 12-foot wall is 2 foot taller than our code currently allows, so they'll need to obtain both of those variances from the Board of Adjustments. And with that, the Planning and Zoning Board did vote unanimously to recommend approval of the request, and staff would recommend approval of ordinance number 2018-41 and ordinance 2018-42 with site plan approval, SP 2018-09, all based upon the findings and conditions contained in the Planning and Zoning Board memorandum.
All right, thank you, Ms. Dittmer. Any questions for Ms. Dittmer? We're going to vote separately on the A and B, too. It's a quasi-judicial. Any disclosures? Seeing none, I do have a sign-up sheet, public hearing, and Mel Scott is here for questions only. It's good to see you, Mel. And Bart Getchins, good to see you.
I have a comment when you get to
Do
it.
you want Mel, that's afterwards?
No, wait, I should ask him now.
Okay, who do you want to ask? Mel
Mel
Scott?
can answer it.
Okay, Mel Scott, please come up to the podium. I just need city.
I'm Mel Scott. I represent Atkins, the engineer of record. Our office is on 7175 Murrell Road in Vieira.
Okay.
Or Melbourne. We can actually put it as Melbourne as well.
All right,
My
Ms. Moore.
question or comment is this a part of what FPL formed a citizens committee to investigate and to participate in this? Is this overall? There were local residents, and I think Vice Mayor Minus, her husband was a part of that.
All right.
Of that committee.
This application is not associated with any kind of citizen-based committee that was formed as a part of this application or this improvement.
Wait a minute, Mr. Getchins is going to come up because
I just need that.
We'll clarify it.
Yeah, I just need that clarification.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was wondering the same thing. If it was a
Good evening. Bart Getchins, 9001 Ellis Road, Melbourne. And the answer is yes, it technically is because of that expanded growth. And we did form a citizens advisory panel.
Yes.
And Councilmember Minus's husband did serve on that committee and helped us with a site selection of the new transmission line linking our Sarno substation over to our O'Galley substation along US 1.
Right.
And we have not picked the transmission line siting yet. But it is part of it because we need to prepare for future growth for the city of Melbourne.
and
Thank
our
you, Bert.
customers.
That's what I needed to know. When I was reading O'Galley, John Rhodes here, and those were just popping into my mind. So thank you for that clarification.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
If I could just for the record, since I just misspoke, Atkins, as the engineer of record, was not a party to nor made aware of
Okay.
those involvements in putting together this site plan.
Okay.
That's correct.
All right.
Thank you.
So is that it? That's it?
That
All right,
answered it for
All
me.
right, I'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council. What is your pleasure?
Mayor,
Vice Mayor Minus.
I move for approval of ordinance number 2018-41.
Second.
Second.
All right, I have a motion for approval of ordinance number 2018-41 by Vice Mayor Minus, second by Mr. Thomas. Discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes. Item 20B, council, what is your pleasure?
Mayor,
Vice Mayor Minus.
I move for approval of ordinance number 2018-42 with site plan approval SP 2018-09 based upon the findings and conditions contained in the Planning and Zoning Board memorandum.
Second.
All right, I have a motion for approval of ordinance number 2018-43 as stated in council's package by Vice Mayor Minus, second by Mr. Alfrey. Discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes. All right, very good, thank you. Item number 21, ordinance number 2018-43, Florida Tech Alumni Center, Miss Allison Dolly.
Yes, an ordinance of the City of Melbourne, Brevard County, Florida, amending the official zoning map as it relates to the general zoning ordinance number 2005-120 by granting a conditional use to allow a school use in a single-family low-density residential zoning district on a 0.928 plus or minus acre portion of the developed Florida Tech North Campus zoned R1 AAA, single-family, low-density residential, located on the west side of Country Club Road, north of Amherst Avenue, and south of Edgewood Drive, 2508, 2600, and 2626 Country Club Road, providing for site plan approval, providing for conditions of approval, providing that the conditional use granted herein may be revoked by City Council if the conditions of approval are not met, providing that the property shall be designated on the official zoning map by the symbol CR1AAA, providing an effective date and providing an adoption schedule.
Thank you, Ms. Dolly. This is under Community Development, Ms. Cindy Dittmer.
Yes, this is the first reading of an ordinance granting a conditional use to allow a school use along with site plan approval on a 0.928 acre property. Property is located on the west side of Country Club Road, north of Amherst Avenue and south of Edgewood Drive. The property is zoned R1 AAA with a low density future land use classification. Florida Tech currently utilizes both of the buildings that are located on this property for school-related uses and would like to make some renovations to the southern building. Southern building may be, some of you have referred to that as the Alumni Center. Florida Tech did receive a grant, and there's some energy efficient renovations that they want to do to the property. The site plan here will show you, this is the current layout, and they'll be removing some of the building that actually is backing up to the single-family residential to the west, and they'll be putting a new addition on here that's shown in the green that will be even further away from the single-family homes that are located to the west of the property. Within this area, there is a mix of single-family residential, particularly to the west, along with churches, a city-owned park, and then other university-related uses that are in the area. And with that, the Planning and Zoning Board did vote unanimously to recommend approval of the request, and staff would recommend approval of ordinance number 2018-43, along with site plan approval, all based upon the findings and conditions contained in the Planning and Zoning Board memorandum.
Thank you, Ms. Dittmer. Any questions for Ms. Dittmer? All right, seeing none, this is quasi-judicial. Any disclosures? Seeing none, this is a public hearing. Do I have any sign-up sheets? I will close the public hearing, bring it back to council. What is your pleasure?
Mayor.
Ms. Thomas.
Move for approval of ordinance number 2018-43 with site plan approval request SP 2018-12 based upon the findings and conditions contained in the Planning and Zoning Board memorandum.
Second.
All right, I have a motion for approval of ordinance number 2018-43 with site plan approval request by Ms. Thomas, second by Ms. Moore. I think this was a tie between Ms. Moore and Mr. Alfrey. Discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes. Item number 22, discussion item, the modifications to city code regarding the mural program, and this is, will be under,
That's me.
Miss Allison Dolly.
Yes, this is an item that came about because of a mural that was appealed by the city council. In reviewing that process, there's been a number of conversations at the council meetings about modifications to city code. So I provided to you a memorandum that explains the First Amendment issues that arise when we start to try to regulate murals, because it's a form of speech that's regulated and protected by the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. You've received a pretty detailed memorandum that I try to, frankly, simplify the First Amendment and how it might apply here. I'll be honest with you, First Amendment law is probably what I consider to be the most complex area of law. And it is constantly changing and evolving. And I have to express my appreciation to Adam Conley, who stays current on all of these issues and helped me immensely in preparing the memo to you and as every step through this whole mural litigation that we've been working with. That challenge has been resolved, but it left us with the decisions as to how the ordinance might need to be modified. And what I did is in the evaluation of where the city wants to go from here, if you'll notice in the memorandum, I put a number of different decision points. And I'm not going to go through the entire First Amendment analysis. And the direction that I'm looking for may not be the final answer tonight, but it's the beginning of a discussion for what direction you all would like to go. And depending on what direction you point me in, we'll probably come back with additional information. But at the end of the day, a really, frankly, very straightforward way to think about First Amendment with murals is to think about whose speech is this? Right now, we have a mural program that's recognized as private speech. It's the private property owner that chooses the message to put on their mural. And I say message, even though the text is limited, even a picture is a message. So right now, we have a mural program that's what I consider to be a private mural program because it's private speech. To that end, that speech is protected by the First Amendment. And we cannot, at the end of the day, you can't regulate content of the messages that are protected by the First Amendment. If the city council would like to have some say into the message that these murals might have, we could replace our private mural program with a public arts program. And the idea there is that the art on the wall will be part of the city art program. And that would mean anybody that wants to have a mural would have to give an easement to the city so that that wall and the right to display art on that wall becomes the city's. So that, of course, would require a group to decide what is the message on the art that the city wants to display. And it becomes a whole different way of thinking about murals. We would eliminate murals from the sign code altogether and replace it that all murals can only be the city speech. And it goes through some kind of vetting and analysis by a committee that decides which artists are going to be commissioned in order to put up the murals. It's a whole different way of thinking about murals. So I think that It's not like I'm going to ask you to vote tonight what direction, but I think it's important to have that discussion. So if you go with the idea of the city public arts program, then the next step would be that we actually have to figure out, frankly, how much does that cost? What does it entail? You know, are we going to create another board, which we would have to create another board. We'd have to figure out a way to fund all this additional art and try to put the pieces in place. And so I didn't do that analysis because I want to find out if that's the direction you want to go before we put those types of numbers together so that you, before a final decision is made, you know what you're committing to. On the other hand, if you go with the current program, which is the private art mural program, then it's going to require that discipline of you're not going to be able to influence the content of that mural that's protected by the First Amendment, except for certain things. There are certain categories of speech that I refer to in my memo that are not protected by First Amendment. So it's things like speech that incites violence, the speech that is obscene, you know, things like that. That's not even protected. We can straight out say you can't have those things on it. Devil's, of course, in the detail as to what might be offensive versus obscene, right? And if it has any redeeming value in the art world, it will not be considered obscene. So at the end of the day, there's a lot of flexibility with what the private owner can do with their murals. And you have to be able to understand that that is not city speech. That is an individual speech. So what you can regulate for, though, however, is this idea of time, place, and manner. And the classic example I like to think of is imagine that I was going to put a mural up of an oncoming train. And I use this example in my memo. If that train is life-size on the bend of a road and bearing down on the traffic that's directed right at it, it would create a traffic hazard. And that would be a problem. And you are allowed to say, based on the picture that they want to present, that creates a traffic hazard that we simply can't allow. And that's a reasonable time, place, and manner. Now think about if that picture was a miniature train and it looked like a cartoon, and there's no way it would be confused with an actual train bearing down on the car in front of it. Then you would not be able to say it's going to create a traffic hazard, right? So that would be a picture that you would have to allow. So what I'd like to do at this point, unless you have some direct questions, is kind of take you through some of these decision points, and you can point me in a direction that you would like to go. So before I get there, do you have anything you want to talk about in particular? Pretty overwhelming, isn't it?
Just quick question, and how does that relate to the Vera rights, and would that still be required?
Well, there are definitely, regardless of which direction you all point me in, I am definitely going to recommend that we address that. Mm-hmm. There is a federal statute that protects what they call the moral rights of the artists. And the idea is that once the artist creates the work of art, they have rights to not having that art destroyed. And so there are some pretty significant cases out there that the artists have prohibited buildings from being demolished that are otherwise falling down, simply because they have the right to protect their art. So whether this is a public or a private art program, I think it would be prudent to, if it's a public art program, to require as part of the public art program that the artists waive their rights under Vera. If it's going to stay a private art program, we can still either do a very clear notice to the property owner that the artist will have these rights or may have these rights unless they get them waived, and provide them with a copy of the form. Or so that at least any owner takes with knowledge that they're committing their property for this purpose. My experience has been that most property owners don't understand that when they get an artist that wants to put a mural up, that muralist has rights in that art. And they think it's just a wonderful thing, and they don't realize that they're actually giving up some rights to their property. And I think that full disclosure is really important if we're going to have a private art program.
Yeah, and I would say that has to be addressed because that's very important. So that would be my concern so far.
Mine too.
Madam Mayor.
Yeah, Mr. Thomas.
What about the Vera for the murals that are already up? What do you do about those? Or do you not worry about them?
Well, there's nothing I can do about them at this point. You know, property owners do things with their property all the time, and I can't help the fact that they might have given that away, but maybe some of them did get the waiver. You know, I have to assume that they were properly represented. I don't know, but I know going forward, I want to make sure that those property owners are aware that they're committing their property for that use. Just as like a public service thing.
Yeah. Mr. Thomas, are you done?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes,
Ms. Moore.
To our city attorney, this is really extensive.
Yes.
And I mean, I've highlighted this thing, I've front to back and read it several times, and I could do it a third and fourth time and still be getting things out of it. What are our sister cities like Orlando? What are they doing? How are they handling that? Because they have art all over the place when I'm driving around and I see it all.
You know, every city does it a little differently. The larger cities do have public arts programs. I believe Mr. McNeese can give you his experience in Sarasota.
I can tell you how it works in Sarasota. I worked with it quite a bit, and they do have a very large public art program, and it takes on the responsibility of securing and placing and locating public art. The way it's funded, for every building that's built in Sarasota that the construction estimate is in excess of $1 million, they pay 0.5% of the total construction value towards the public art fund. For example, if the new Hilton tapestry through $35 million, 0.5% of that would be 250,000 times 35. It'd be a lot of money. Okay, sorry, my math brain's not working that fast. For $1 million project, it's a $5,000 assessment. So 35 times 5,000, whatever that is, that they pay into the public art program, and then the committee uses that money when it's pooled and commissions art to go in different places. It may be a sculpture, it may be a mural. They do too many murals. Mostly they do a lot of sculpture. Alternatively, if the builder or the developer wants to buy a piece of art and contribute it and have it on his property or have it somewhere else, you can do that as an option as opposed to just paying into the fund. So I would say that's an example of somebody that has a very high dollar, extensive public art program that would be, I'm sure, far beyond the sort of thing that if you wanted to do in Melbourne, because they're very aggressively installing new art with the money they get from these big projects. But that's one way it can work.
May I ask you another question?
Yes.
Who decides on the content of the art that goes on the building?
Now you're to the really interesting part. There is a public art committee that works just like your other advisory committees do. They're selected for that purpose. And if a developer says, I don't want to pay into the fund, I want to provide a certain sculpture, they have some leeway there and some very robust debates about that process and what is appropriate, not appropriate, and that goes into the hands of that public art committee.
Okay.
Mayor,
Ms. Lopez.
why don't we do the easy stuff first? like let's say public comments, public input into the meeting. That plus removal of the mural is if it's substantially similar to the proposed mural and approve. In other words, if the original mural that was approved is not painted on the building, that should automatically be removed.
Yep.
Tell me that again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's.
But it did go through the review again and was approved.
Right,
I don't think we're talking about the old murals. I'm talking about moving forward.
Yeah, I
Moving
know.
forward from now on.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
Let's handle the easy stuff right now. That means public comments are allowed in the meeting. And also the fact that the original mural should be the one that's painted, period.
Okay. Mr. Thomas.
Yeah, and
So
again, I'm
forth
looking
and
at
so
the City of Melbourne mural application for architectural review, and it states the finished mural must match the rendered attached to the COO, the certificate of appropriateness, or the permit may be denied requiring reconsideration. I think we stop it there and say if it doesn't match at least within 90% of what the depiction is, then it's not approved, and it comes down. One of the things.
This is tough.
One of the things I was looking at is in the mural ordinance. There's a sentence here that really kind of tells us what we need to be doing. It says murals are an investment in the city's unique identity and its cultural cohesiveness. Cultural cohesiveness. And I don't know what downtown city of Melbourne is doing different than the anti-gravity project, but man, they seem to do it right. The art that's down there is beautiful. It goes with the decor of the building. It makes people feel warm and welcomed when they go down there. And my concern is with the anti-gravity project, we're going to get more and more of these type murals like we just had. And again, you have a citizen board that has to, basically render a decision on whether or not it's appropriate or not. And then if the artist is playing games and maybe the depiction that he showed to get the certificate of appropriateness is different than, obviously way different than what is already up on the wall, then what they do is they load the gallery up with supporters. And again, as we heard in the video, they talk about the greatness of the artist. Everybody gets up and says, "Oh, this is what the city needs." And the boards, it's easy for them to be intimidated. And so, that's my whole thing is I think what we have here as far as the guidelines really are pretty good, other than we just need to make sure that the finished mural matches the rendering. And if it doesn't, then it needs to come down. That's my big thing. And like I said, Melbourne's got it right. I don't know why we haven't had any issues with them, but maybe it's Jaron. But they've done their homework, and I think they've really focused on cultural cohesiveness of the city, and that's my concern going forward. Is we tighten up the the one thing here, and I have no interest in the city controlling the message. I don't think any of us do.
No.
I don't have any interest in that.
Yeah.
I'm all for the property owners being able to do what they have to do, but at the same time they have to follow. They have to follow what's in the ordinance, and that's my thing.
Okay, so Ms. Thomas.
I would totally agree. I think that we do need to keep our current mural program, but I do believe that we have to tighten up what's going out there. I think that if somebody's going to present what they're going to put up, that's what they need to put up. And I think if we go through that step by step with our attorney on exactly what we want to see on those kinds of things, I think that we can tighten this up and make sure that it's being done the most appropriately way it could be being done.
All right, hold on. I got Vice Mayor Minus.
Mayor, I totally agree also that whatever is written, and that is what they submitted, then that is what they should and shall go by. And if we have to change the wording to shall, if it is not, then they shall remove it, then that needs to be done. So, there's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. You either going to paint 1, 2, and 3, and then paint 1, 2, and 3. We don't want 4. We said 1, 2, and 3, and that's what you shall do. So that's very elementary, and I think that's what needs to be done.
Okay, so, oh, sorry, Ms. Lopez.
By any chance, do we currently have a notice to be provided to the property owners within a certain number of feet of the proposed mural with a copy of the mural? Is that already in there or no?
No, and
I
that
would
was
like to
one
see
of the
that also.
suggestions.
I think that's a good suggestion.
Okay.
You too.
Yeah,
Mayor.
yeah, Ms.
I totally agree. We got ourselves into a real bind this last time, and I don't want to pass that on to anybody else to be able to handle that. We had some artists that came in, once they saw the wall and the light, they changed the background color, but the content was exactly as they had presented. So I had absolutely no problem with that. That was a really minor change. But when someone came in with 3 figures, and that's what they were going to do, and we ended up with the situation we were in because it was nothing like that. And we need to protect ourselves so we're not back in that situation again. Because, art is in the beholder. It's in your eye of the beholder. What some people like and some people find that are offensive. And, so we have to have some control. I would like to see whoever is on the board have a little bit of an art background, so when this comes to them, they kind of know what our feelings are. And I look downtown and I find not one of those buildings offensive. I think they're lovely. We had the art walk, and I was participating in it. And people were really, really excited about everything that they saw. I can't say that's happening in O'Galley. Unfortunately, there are some that are, oh, that's really very nice. And then there are some saying, how did you let that happen? And that's what I want to avoid. How did you let that happen?
But, Ms. Dolly, I have a question. So how many artists, this wasn't the only artist in O'Galley Boulevard that was cited. There was other artists. Was it 7 or 8?
There
didn't paint exactly
There
what
were 6 or 8 other murals that differed substantially enough that were required also to come back through Historic and Architectural Review Board approval again a second time. Yes.
And then it approved. So what you're wanting is, if it's not like what they presented, then we need to shut them down now. All right, so is that something that we can do?
We can certainly do that. We can certainly do that if that's what you would like to do. Basically, the idea is that if you're not starting with a fresh slate, you don't get to go through again.
Okay, so you cite them.
Yeah.
Okay.
They start with a fresh slate. So if they have not painted what's either substantially like or exactly like that which was approved, then they basically have to whitewash it, start over again, and just understand that the art, a lot of it will be in the disclosure early on, educate property owners early on, educate artists early on, because people pay a lot of money for these murals. And we want to make sure that they realize if they don't paint it, just because something turns out really fantastic, they may have to whitewash it in order to start the process all over again.
Madam Mayor, and that's a very good point. And so again, the city of Melbourne has that wired somehow, whereas O'Galley doesn't. And so we need to figure out whoever's managing that for the city of Melbourne needs to help out the folks at O'Galley and educate them. But the other thing too, I want to say about the guidelines too, is not only is that for the Architectural Review Board to make sure that they follow what's in the ordinance, but it's also for the residents to look at and understand how something is approved. And again, when they look at this, and with case in point with the mural that was so controversial, and they see that the finished mural must match the rendering attached to the certificate of appropriateness, and then, it's nowhere close, then they say, what the heck's going on? And that's, I think, why you had so much of an uproar and why this thing was so controversial, is because the impression or the perception was the Architectural Review Board didn't follow the ordinance as far as the way it should have been
And you know,
carried
another
out.
thing too is the owner of that building wanted that mural too. So then you got that factor.
Yes, ma'am.
So they didn't object. They wanted it. They didn't want it changed. So you had those going on.
Right. So where
and
do
I
we go from here?
That is very, very helpful to me, and I will be putting some changes together for city code to reflect this discussion, but I need to ask you another question. So we are now on page 6 of my memo, and we're at a decision point.
Which one?
So,
all right, page 6.
yeah,
Wait a minute.
Have it on.
I'm on
okay,
page
5. There's
Got it?
5. Okay,
Okay.
page 6. Okay.
yeah, the page number's at the top of the memo.
Sorry.
That's okay. So one thing that was confusing, I think, about the appeal that we had before is that the original decision was made by the Historic and Architectural Review Board.
Right.
The appeal, when City Council asked that the city manager appeal the decision, the appeal went to the P&Z Board. And the next step would have been to come back to City Council, but you are the ones that initiated the appeal, so it would be difficult to initiate and provide a fair hearing. And only after that did they go to the courts. And so I would recommend that you streamline that. So it makes sense to keep the review with the Historic and Architectural Review Board. The reality is this is the council that appoints that board. And when you're choosing the people for that board, you want to remember that you're going to want somebody that maybe has artistic value or something like that. That's who you want to think about when you're choosing the people on that board. The question is, where do we appeal it? And I think that it is important to understand that sometimes you have a role as the judge, right, in a quasi-judicial. Sometimes you have the role as the advocate, right? Because when people come to you and say, you need to do something for me, right? Then you're going in as the advocate. So I recommend that you make a very conscious decision before you're in the middle of a challenge, what role this council is going to play. It would not be unreasonable to say any decision of the Historic and Architectural Review Board should go straight to the courts. That would be fine. And that is how some of our decisions are made. Like if there's a question from, I believe it's I'm thinking the Board of Adjustment appeals directly into the courts. So there are boards, there's a precedent for that. What we want to avoid is having all these multiple layers of review. It became so confusing as to what the standard was and what they're looking for. But in order to make that change, I need direction from you where you want to go on appeal. I'm sorry, let me correct that. Where do you want the initial decision made, and then where do they go on appeal?
Okay, so, all right, Mr. Thomas.
Madam Mayor, I don't have any problem with the HARB doing the original hearing, but I really think it's within our scope as a city council to be the first round of the appeal process, and then go to the court system from there. But I really think the city council should hear it if there's an appeal past the HARB.
Mayor?
All right, Ms. Lopez.
I agree with him totally. I don't think we should give that to the judges. I'd rather keep it under our roof. We make the decision. That's why we're here. That's how I feel.
Mr. Alfrey.
No, I'd have to agree with that. I mean, we're here to make tough decisions, and it's probably a decision we don't want to make, but we need to make that decision. So I would say, first off, on the HARB, on the application, maybe expand it to what scope of artistic, what can you offer or that, and what kind of art background you have, if you can go more into detail on that for the council to select that person. And number two, I would go with the HARB, doing what they do, and then I would bring it back to council and let us decide, and we'll go from there. That's where I think we should be involved in that process.
Okay. I do agree with the HARB board making some revisions, including an artist type individual who's familiar
Yeah, that didn't, Mayor.
Yes.
That
Ms.
didn't go well. I was sitting in the audience. There were 3 non-artists sitting in the audience when the Harp Board made the second decision. And I never want to go against another board.
No.
They're all volunteers and what have you. But they relied totally on what the audience said. And it was packed, as Councilman Thomas said, with all artists. And they were quite vocal about it. And then, then we take it to planning and zoning as it's set up now. We need to change this. We need to get rid of one of those layers in there. So I agree with what Councilman Thomas said. We go to HARP, but then the council, it comes back to us if there is a problem. I look at downtown. How many decisions have we had to make about downtown Melbourne's artwork? 0. None. It was all done very well. And that's what we need to do. I don't know who made those decisions as to what was going to go on the side of their buildings, but I don't find any of them offensive. There's nothing that children can't see. But yet I've got some issues in downtown O'Galley. So we just can't let ourselves get caught up in that. And nobody wants to paint over those buildings.
All right.
I know this is very difficult, but you have to remember that if it's a private art program, the owner of the property gets to choose.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And so and we'll get into the mural guidelines a little bit, but remember, like if you talk about obscenity, okay? Hardcore pornography, that's obscenity. Child pornography, that's obscenity. There's case law that supports that. But simply because it's a sexual picture does not make it obscenity. Now, we may have some issue where we could trigger the adult entertainment or something, but it's not an adult entertainment business, so we may not be able to, right? So my only point is there very well may be things that you find offensive in a private art program. It could be words that you don't like, maybe not big words because we only allow 10%. But there's case law out there that a guy was wearing in the courthouse a jean jacket or something that said F the draft. And guess what? He had a First Amendment right to wear that. And so you would have to allow that. So I just want everyone to understand that's the flexibility that you're allowing. And I don't want anyone to be surprised if something offensive does get proposed that we can't control.
What about violence?
Violence is another one where if it's an incitement to unlawful action that's imminent, you can prohibit it. But if it's just general advocacy that we should overthrow the government, you got to allow it.
Yeah.
So it is a very, First Amendment stuff is very difficult pill to swallow. So it's just, so much of it is the community having the input in terms of who is making the proposal, but at the end of the day, if that property owner wants to have that and thinks it would be good for his business, he's allowed to do that.
And so, I'm sorry, Mayor.
All right, Mr. Thomas.
And so far, even with the mural so far that we've seen from a gallery, other than the one that got all the attention, for the most part, we haven't had too many issues.
Right.
That's right.
So again, I think it goes back again to just making sure that the HARB and the artists, as far as their certificate of appropriateness, follow the guidelines. If they follow the guidelines, then it's smooth sailing. But if they don't, they have to understand that more likely that it's coming down. If they don't follow the guideline, and the first one is the rendering has to match the final product.
I think you're right. I think that will nip a lot of this
It's
in
going to
the
nip a
bud.
lot of it. It's going to nip a lot of it. Oh, and City Attorney, I have one other thing, because I was looking at submittal requirements, and the last one down there says examples of the artist's past work, especially other murals. Either submit paper copies of the work or a link to the website where his or her work can be viewed. And this is my concern, because we've talked about hate speech and inciting violence that they can't do. So on Mr. Gondik, okay, so when I started hearing all the uproar from the store owner across the street about the art and how she was being treated, I Googled this guy, and obviously we've talked about before, there's a cartoon of a sitting president assassinated with a bullet hole through his eye, a bullet hole through his knee, a bullet hole through his stomach. And so again, if you go back to the ordinance where it talks about cultural cohesiveness, how is that benefiting the cultural cohesiveness of the city of Melbourne? Somebody that has an artist of a sitting president, that has a mural of a sitting president assassinated laying on his side, to me, they should be persona non grata. Their work, we shouldn't allow any of their work in here. So why couldn't we allow the HARB, when they're reviewing this, if they do a Google search on the artist and they find anything that's hate speech or inciting violence, then he's not allowed to paint inside the city. Why couldn't we do that?
Under First Amendment law, that's known as prior restraints.
Yeah.
And we can't regulate just because they had something in the past that was offensive. We cannot regulate and say no speech for you because in the past you've done something offensive. That's why that concept of tell me exactly what you're going to put up and send it out with a notice, that's why that's so critical. Because you'll know if he's going to put butterflies and rainbows up or if he's going to do a shooting of Trump or whatever.
There's some neat.
But my point being that was something he did in his past.
He's not done.
Can't
But
count
I
it.
got you.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so, all right, Vice Mayor Minus.
Mayor,
And then followed by Ms. Thomas.
First Amendment is First Amendment. I don't care how you look at it. Now, if there is anything racial or logos or swastikas or whatever, and that owner doesn't mind that or whatever, what do? Get a paintbrush and go out ourselves?
No, you would
I'll go
never
out.
self-help like that.
No.
I know you wouldn't.
I know I can't.
Councilmember Minus.
All right.
It is a difficult issue. And I can't tell you for certain, I probably can't stop that. But you always have to remember that it may be self-moderating because most people don't want to go to a business that has hate speech on it. That's bad for customer business. So I have a feeling most people wouldn't be so blatant about it, although certainly possible.
Yes, it is.
Just like they, I think it was something Christian that they put on the one in our galley. It could have been the KKK there. It could have been a swastika there, whatever.
Yes.
So that would have been an issue. The same thing happened with a candidate in Palm Bay with one of his signs. I mean, it could very well be, one of the murals.
That's right.
So that's that's why I'm very adamant, if you will, that whatever they submit is what they get,
That's right.
what they paint. No ifs, ands, and buts. It shall be what you
Okay.
put up.
I think we're all unanimous on that one.
Ms. Thomas.
I guess my question would be if we are going to be changing or tightening up those rules, would then, if it was going to HARB and then to City Council and then to court, if we took out the City Council component, because obviously they already have to tighten it up because we're making those rules in there now, the next step would probably be, because in my mind, if it's coming to council, it means that they've done something that we probably don't agree with. I mean, it's something that's pretty bad. So why wouldn't we just then send it off on to court at that point? Because I think we'd all agree at that point that that is probably where it's heading. So it would just take that middle spot out of it because it would already be coming to us and we'd probably already disagree with it anyways. So we would be sending it on into the court system beyond that anyway. So I'm not sure. I understand if we weren't tightening these up, that yes, it would need to come back to us, but with tightening them up, do we really need it to come back to us? Because that process may be taking care of itself.
How expensive how much money do we want to spend?
That's what's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, Mr. Thomas?
Madam Mayor, and again, I think the city has to play a part in that because we're the elected officials, we're the ones that are held accountable. And so, again, if there's something that is in a public uproar that is, again, sent to us by the HARB, we need to decide upon it. And then let the voters hold us accountable for whatever it is that we decide. And then ultimately, if they ended up challenging it and it goes up to the higher court, let them roll with it. But I still think we have to have a role to play in it. It's our city.
Mayor?
And we should have a say so.
Ms. Thomas?
That makes complete sense to me. I totally get that. I think that my hope is that with tightening up these rules, that we aren't going to fall into that position and we're not going to end up having it. But I guess I do understand that if there was a situation that came up that there was a huge outcry, that I guess it would be important for us to be able at that point to be able to say, it needs to.
And then they can always take it to
They can
court.
Right, they can take it up to the next level at that point.
So that raises the issue, if city council's going to sit in the role as judge,
Yes.
is city council going to, I would recommend that you don't act as advocate then.
That's
So
right.
that
It's been
means the
very
city
biased.
council will not be saying, okay, city manager, I need you to appeal this decision.
Right.
Okay, so it would be the property owners or the neighbors that would have to appeal the decision, people with standing other than the city.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, just want to make sure everybody's on the same page on that one. Okay, well, we're almost done. Can I keep going?
Yeah.
Okay. So the next issue is cleaning up those mural guidelines. And generally, I think that the way they're stated is fine. I would like to clarify it a little bit more to make it very clear that obscenity, fighting words, and incitement to unlawful action is not allowed. It's not protected speech, and you can say, no, you may not have those. And I can't imagine a situation where this council would say, oh, no, we want those things on murals. So I'm going to presume you don't want those.
Good presuming.
There's this concept, I talked about a little bit, called secondary effects, and I talked about the train and how there may be a situation where there's a secondary effect that you're completely legitimate in regulating time, place, and manner to regulate those secondary effects. I would like to list those situations out, but I have to warn you that they're these flexible catch-alls that cannot be manipulated to say, oh, it's not historic because we've never had a mural like this before, right? It's far more case law based, and it's far more a legal analysis. But I do think it's important to put them in your guidelines so that in the event one of them is triggered, it's very clear that you have the ability. And I would just go ahead and put in that flexibility that's recognized in case law. The beauty of that also is that First Amendment case law is changing all the time, and it will allow for that flexibility when the Supreme Court makes another decision, that we can simply interpret that based on whatever the latest case law is. Okay? Everybody good with that idea? Now, last issue. Oh my gosh, I can't believe we're getting through all of these. These are the things that make me excited.
I think we're hungry.
Locations. So right now, you had expanded the mural locations that they were allowed outside of CRAs, and you allow them, there's some restrictions about properties that border residential property, but for the most part, I'll call it citywide. Do you want to continue that concept? And is there anything that you want to protect a little bit and carve out in light of the fact that now you truly understand that it's not just, there may be a situation where something's is protected by First Amendment. It's not necessarily obscene, but it's pretty offensive, and you don't want that kind of stuff around schools or things like that. So
Okay, churches and schools.
yeah, the idea is, can they be within a certain distance of those things, or can murals, and again, you're not basing it on what the content of the mural is. You're basically saying no murals that face a school, or no murals that face a church, or whatever it is.
Right, Mayor?
Yeah, Mr. Alfrey.
What if we write in there something to the, like 500 feet from a church or school, it's prohibited,
Wow.
unless it goes to council? I mean, that's something that we could do, that we would have the final say.
But then you're back to, so what's council going to make their decision based on? Content. And you
Well,
can't do that.
okay, well, that it's appropriate.
Yeah, we can't make decisions based on appropriate, because that would be content.
Because you got churches in O'Galley that, I can see that's an issue in O'Galley.
Yeah, it is. Mayor?
But,
Oh,
yeah.
go ahead, excuse me.
No, go ahead.
This location, I remember what that was. We had a restaurant. I can't remember whether it was Aurora or Sarno or Aurora.
Okay.
And he wanted to put something on the side of his building. In fact, he did.
He did.
Yeah.
And it was,
And they had to whitewash it.
right. And it was restaurant food related, as I remember when I went and looked at it. There was nothing offensive about it. It was out of a art district or a CRA,
Yeah, it was.
and but we made him take it down. So, as I say, how are we going to allow this? Are we going to allow other businesses to be able to put them in, or are we going to restrict them to a CRA or art district?
That's it.
I'm not for restricting them. So if you're one block outside the CRA, you can't have it? I think the CRAs get enough around here. I think if you're gonna
No,
do it,
they
go
don't get
citywide.
enough.
Yes, they do. Yes, that's
well,
my
they-
opinion, I'll keep it.
Wait,
your opinion, huh?
I just want to make a clarification on that, Councilman Alfrey.
Sure.
The CRA does not pay for the artist.
I never said they paid for it.
No, but I just wanted to make that point, that they don't pay for the paint or the
And I've
artist.
never said that they do pay, but what I'm saying is, when you're restricting something just to the CRA, what if you're just outside of it? I mean, if you look at it, and in the arts district, you might naturally expand. So I feel that if we want to do it, you do it
Yeah.
throughout all the businesses.
I don't have a problem expanding, but do we do it because there's business off of Aurora? And of course, there's some houses too.
Yeah.
So, and then.
Well,
I
you
like
already
the-
have a restriction on bordering residential property,
Okay.
right?
All right.
Cindy, maybe you can recall,
It can be
can't
a
remember the
certain
exact.
percentage. That sign can only be a certain percentage.
Yeah, I was actually trying to pull it up and my computer's not cooperating to know exactly what our current guidelines say. But there is a restriction about, I think it's facing residential properties, something
Yeah,
to
I
that
thought so,
nature.
too. But you know what? I also wanted the owners, or the owner to notify, or the city to notify owners, residents nearby, so that they have a chance to weigh in on it too. So
Yep, we can add that.
just,
Madam Mayor.
Yeah,
And
Mr.
I'm
Thomas.
interested to hear what the rest of the city council thinks, because I'm really perplexed by this, because when this came before the council, the recommendation of the city staff was that murals not go citywide, and they stay in the CRAs, and I voted that they go citywide. Now, after all the stuff that we just went through, I'll be honest with you, I'm gun shy now, and I'm questioning whether or not that was the right decision. Is anybody else kind of wondering if they made the right decision on that too?
Mayor?
If not, I mean, I'm asking the question because
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
really perplexed
That
about
they
it.
can go citywide or can't go citywide.
Well, they can go citywide right now, and the recommendation of the staff was they recommended that they not go citywide, but we voted that they do go citywide. And now I'm questioning,
Okay.
maybe that wasn't the best decision. I don't know, but that's kind of where I'm
he's
perplexed.
just throwing it out.
The mayor?
Ms. Lopez and then Mr. Alfrey.
I wanted citywide, definitely, because I think that anything the CRA can do, or we allow the CRA, we should allow the whole city. They should have the same privileges as the CRA. Another thing is about the school and the churches. I mean, what if they want a mural on their premises? You can't, say 500 feet from there. You have churches that have religious murals, and you have schools that have murals to teach the students something or another. So you really can't do that either.
Okay. All right, Mr. Alfrey?
And I think it's a very good point there. I don't think it's an issue that we go citywide. There were mistakes made, and for example, there were no bearer rights on all these murals, and we're moving past that. And what we're doing, we're stepping forward, saying we're going to control it. If it's not right, it's going to get whitewashed, and maybe that will solve our problems. This is a fixing it session, and I don't think it was a wrong decision. I just think we're working the bugs out of it.
Okay.
All right. Ms. Thomas, did you want?
No. Schools would have to go before the school board.
Yes.
They can't just arbitrarily, I don't think we don't think.
Yeah, Ms. Dolly, if they want to put a mural on their building, they go through the school board, right?
No, that would be, they go through the school board. I'd have to research it to be sure, but my understanding is construction goes through the school board.
Right,
I don't
they
think
usually-
a sign does.
Oh,
Really?
because I know in construction, they pretty much do
Construction, they
their
control
thing.
it.
That's
Yeah.
right. Okay.
Get a ruling on that.
You want to know for sure?
Yeah.
I do.
Because I think there's some schools that do want to put a mural on their building, and we shouldn't restrict that.
But
Or daycares.
Daycares.
I don't think we are.
I don't think we are.
We are not
No.
restricting it.
Yeah, nurseries and daycares.
Okay.
Can we move on?
Yeah, I think
Now, as
You got
far,
another point?
is there anything else?
We are done. Thank
now,
you so much.
Yeah.
All right, so
And
it's going to come back to us.
Yes.
In first and second reading.
Absolutely.
All right, so then I want the public's input too. I feel that's
Absolutely.
important. Sir, I haven't called you up yet.
And Mayor, real quick, one last thing. I think there is a mural on Sable of the
There is.
of the horse. Yeah, there is a mural.
Yes, yep,
Right.
yep,
There is,
right.
because I see it all the time.
All right, are we done with the conversation? I do have a sign-up sheet. Mr. Eric Ellebrock.
As long as you don't forget me, okay?
Yes, sir.
Right off the bat, lifelong resident, City of Melbourne, Eric V. Ellebrock, 1948 Tyler Avenue. If you all recall, back in the 80s, there was quite the mural on O'Galley High School, but we did a number on that because certain students found it objectionable, which leads me to the point. Quick couple of comments about this conversation. First of all, I thought the City of Melbourne and City of O'Galley had merged back in the 60s.
69.
Thank you. I have that tattooed on my arm. I have, so I kind of bring objections to this, like, the folks in the Melbourne are doing this great. We need to get the guys in O'Galley to follow. No, we're all one city.
Yes,
Okay.
I agree.
Now, let's talk about the art down in Melbourne. Believe it or not, some people find some of that art objectionable. I find that mural, that the pilgrimage to FIT, the school that gave a degree to the guy who invented the hydrogen bomb, objectionable as hell. But I don't find it objectionable enough to break out the paintball gun. I want to quote somebody here, and I'm going to quote. I want you to guess who I'm quoting. If you put the city in the position to regulate art, you're opening up a hornet's nest. Any idea who said that?
No, sir.
I did. I said that about 3 years ago. Okay? All this pontificating and so forth and so on. Another thing I'd like to point out is that regardless of any discussion, be it content of art or so forth and so on, by law, you are required to have citizen comments. That's a basic thing, You'd remember that, okay? By law, you're required. So, let's not get into that subject. The point you guys are overlooking, you're making much to do about nothing. Because public art can be public regulated. All right? Hypothetically, if somebody personally finds, let's say, I'll give you two examples, and I like this previous city council meetings, certain members mentioned art in foreign countries about pictures of great leaders somewhere and all that. So here, we're gonna run with that here for a second. Let's say on one side on one wall in the city of Melbourne, a giant picture of Donald Trump is painted. And let's say a giant picture of Che Guevara is painted. How long do you think either one of those pictures would exist without somebody doing something to them? Because somebody, or let's say a giant picture of Adolf and a swastika. How long, or David Duke, how long do you think those pictures would last without somebody doing something to them? Because that somebody would find it so damn offensive that they would be willing to risk going to jail over it. Now, excuse me.
Wrap it up.
Yes, ma'am. I have a paintball gun that shoots 70 paintballs a minute with Sherwin-Williams' finest. If I found anything objectionable, not just me, the citizens would regulate it. The citizens would regulate the art. You guys do not give enough. And I understand this. Because this is with your job. This is but you don't give enough credit to the citizens and proactive citizenry. Thank you.
And also, Mr. Hellebrock, I have cameras on the building, so if somebody defaced it, I would have, I would call the police.
Of course, and they would go to jail.
Well, I don't know about that. Okay, so are we pretty much done, Miss Allison? You need any motions, or you
Nope,
just got?
I'm good.
All
I
right.
know the direction that you all would like to go, and I'll put something together and bring it back to you.
All right, thank you.
It will be a while because it has to go through HARB and P&Z and all these other boards.
Are you going to put them through the CRA boards too?
We will need that as
Yeah,
well.
I would like to input from the CRA boards. Yeah.
Mayor,
Yep. Ms. Lopez.
I want to thank Allison for all that work she
Yes.
researched for us.
Adam.
Adam, too.
Thank you, Adam.
All the work they did for us to be able to make these decisions. Thank you.
Yeah.
Our pleasure.
All right, item number 23, and it's Allison Dolly again. Discussion concerning the pursuit of potential litigation to seek recovery of costs associated with the opioid crisis and consideration of whether to issue a request for qualification to retain a law firm to pursue potential litigation on behalf of the city. All right, Miss Allison Dolly.
Yes, this is just a follow-up from the discussion we had back in March when there were two firms that appeared and wanted to talk to council about pursuing recovery of costs related to the opioid crisis. And you asked that we gather a little bit of information before you all made any decision. I just wanted to give you a status on that information. So if there's direction you would like me to take, that's fine. If there is not, then I'll wait until the next time somebody raises it. But at the end of the day, I did ask the police, the fire, and HR to give me an estimate of what kind of damages they would consider related to the opioid crisis. And I did get some information. The police department provided information about how many opioid-related calls for service that they have had since 2012. And they were able to provide, they handled 1,934 related calls for services in that time period. That's a lot of years, though. It's 2012 through 2018. They estimated about how much time is spent. And again, this is all, I know they spent a lot of time on it, but this has not been vetted from a legal perspective. This is, there may be more, there may be less. It's their estimate that there's about $117,000 that they have incurred that is related to opioid crisis since January 1st of 2012. Also talked to the fire department. Fire department did an estimate of the number of calls where they gave Narcan in response to a medical call, and they provided the 20, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the year here, I can't find my year, 20, I think it's 16 and 17. 2016 were 119 responses, and they averaged the cost of that is about $4,000. And then in 2017, It was 142 responses. Average cost is about $8,000. So those are the numbers. And then the HR department did provide some information about the number of employees and how that are on pain medicines or have been prescribed pain medicines. But honestly, it's a little too removed for me to draw any conclusions of it, but that's the type of damages that would be involved. So you may recall from the presentation that was made is some of the cities, counties, and states around the country have been filing suits. Some are going state, some are going federal. If you go federal, you get removed into this multi-district litigation out of Ohio. What the judge has done in that case is he assigned 3 what he's calling the bellwether cases, and he is allowing them to go forward with trial, and he has set the trial date for September of 2019. And so everyone is watching these 3 cases to see what kinds of defenses are being brought up, things like that. And I think they have, I want to say 700 plaintiffs, 700 city, towns, and states
700
have filed their complaints in that multi-district litigation. Some cities, counties, and states instead go to state court. Palm Bay is one such entity. They have decided to file in state court. Their lawsuit has been filed, and they're in the process of serving all the named defendants, and there's, I think, about 20 defendants. And they have not gotten to the point where they have an exchange of documents or anything like that. The county has decided to hire a local firm, and they don't know if they're going to go with the federal or the state litigation. They're monitoring to see what happens with this multi-district. They expect to have some idea of what direction they want to go. The county attorney told me by the end of this month. And once they make that decision, that they'll file their complaint within about 60 days. Interestingly, back in May, the Attorney General for the state of Florida did file a suit. She's filed Pam Bondi filed in state court. Now, if you'll remember from our conversation before, when you think about the damages or the remedies that the city could possibly receive, only the state's attorney really has the ability to collect for the general harm to the community. Okay, so our Attorney General has done that, and she will be pursuing it. The city's interest would be more in terms of damages. So what have we incurred that needs to be reimbursed? Mm-hmm. There are some challenges to that, and I'd rather not get into specifics in an open meeting because there's no reason to educate, not that they don't already know, but there are definitely some challenges in identifying what kind of expenses we have that we could recover. As far as the contracts that I've seen for retaining legal assistance, we would not handle this in-house. We would hire somebody outside. They take these types of cases on a contingency basis, which means you only pay for them based on the recovery that you get. So if they recovered $100,000, we would give a percentage of that back to the lawyers, and we would pay for the costs and expenses that were incurred, and they give us what's left. What's interesting about the contracts that I've seen local government sign is that you never have to pay more than the amount that's actually recovered, but they're basing their percentages on non-monetary recovery. So if the recovery is, we're going to do a public education campaign that's valued at $500,000, and we're going to give you $100,000 in cash as the settlement, then the attorneys would get the 25% of the $100,000 and 25% of the value of that public education campaign, but in no event more than the amount of money that's recovered. So at the end of the day, I don't know how much cash would be
left,
to be quite honest.
Yeah.
Although, and I think it is significant that the Attorney General is pursuing the case on behalf of the state of Florida in terms of addressing the ills to the general public. I think that's important. We can continue to monitor it to see what happens. I just wanted to make sure I gave you an update as to what the current status is. You probably hear a lot about it at any League of Cities things that you go to or in the news.
Okay. All right. So I do have a sign-up sheet. Do you want to make comments now or just wait till open up a public hearing? Mr. Ellerbrock.
Let him get it over with.
And we're still early. I mean, it's like
Yeah, it's
9.
not even 10 o'clock yet.
Yeah.
You know, it
It's
does
not-
get
that's
till
right.
11.
Those were the good old days.
Yes, ma'am. I've
All right.
been here till 1 o'clock in the morning. Okay. Eric V. Elbrook, 1948 Tyler Avenue. You know, I could be a twit and say I've changed my mind. I think if we get any money, it can go to our new rehab that we're going to open up. But that's not the case. Let's be honest here. I can't help but draw parallels because let's face it, the new rehab's going to make money off the opioid crisis. The lawyers are making money off the opioid crisis, but we ain't going to make any money. And if we do make any money, it's blood money. You know, come on. What it boils down to is these people are profiting off of people's lack of control. There's a little bit of self-responsibility. We all know addiction's a disease and such. But I mean, this is elevating it into a whole new... Okay, the city has chunked out some change, you know, but we're talking less than $200,000. I'm kind of interested as to what the employee issue is, but we're not going to get into that.
Let's not.
Yeah, let's not get into that. But at the end of the day, this just reeks of opportunism, man. This just smells. It's a lot like the tobacco addiction, the tobacco law settlement and all that. And nobody saw any money out of that, except for Mr. Duryea and the attorneys. They made a lot, and some advertising agencies made a lot. But the people that really suffered from it, truly suffered from it, didn't see it. But of course, they suffer for their own actions. But then we get into this metaphysical thing about addiction overriding the need for self-preservation. But that's something I'm not going to get into at this point. But if you want me to get into it, meet me at Foo Bar. But I think at the end of the day, this just reeks of opportunism. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Eric. I'm going to close the public hearing, bring it back to council. And what do you all want to do? Just wait?
I think I'd like to wait. I think I'd like to just sit back
Okay.
and wait. I don't.
Mayor?
Yeah, Ms. Lopez.
We also have to realize the message that we will be sending if we do a lawsuit. We're telling the pharmaceutical industry that they have to stop what they're doing. They have to make sure that they are approaching the doctors not to sell their drugs, but to help their patients. And that's the message that I think the city should be sending. It's good to get some reimbursement. If we do, fine. But it's the message that's more important than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Mayor,
All right.
I know someone who had knee surgery about 2 months ago, and the doctor prescribed the opiates for them for their knee surgery. They said, we really don't want these. The pain isn't that bad. We can handle this. Actually, he said, well, I'll just give you a couple, and you can just hang on to them, just in case you might need them. When they went to the pharmacy to have it filled, there was enough for 14 days, 2 pills a day, is what it was written for. And he refused it. He refused the prescription. I think some of this lies with the doctors for putting a lot of blame on pharmaceuticals. But I think a lot of this falls upon the doctors in this case. was just, maybe this is an isolated case? I don't think so, but I think we need to be careful of who we're going after.
Yeah.
And Mayor,
Okay, Mr. Alfrey.
I would have to agree. We should trust our doctors, and if our doctors don't do a good job, get another doctor. So I think placing the blame just at one place, I don't agree with it.
So,
All right.
Mayor?
Yeah, Ms. Lopez.
But you also have to realize the pharmaceutical companies are giving the doctors a kickback, that if they prescribe those drugs, they would receive money from them. So it's a partnership there that's going on. I don't know whether you know it or not, but there's a partnership and they are both responsible.
All right.
okay.
All right. Let's go to item 24. Board appointments. It's the Police Officers Retirement Trust Fund Board of Trustees appointment of 2 resident members and the 5th member. So, all right, so requested action is, we'll do it in 2 motions. Reappoint Scott Olson and Gary Farfet as the, I'm sorry? Parfit as the resident members. So I need a motion.
Mayor,
Vice Mayor Minus.
I move to reappoint Scott Olson and Gary Parfit as resident members.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second to reappoint Scott Olson and Gary Parfit as the resident members. Further discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes. Second is to approve the board's reappointment of Janice Hill as the 5th member.
I so move.
Second.
All right, I have a motion by Ms. Moore, second by Vice Mayor Minus. Discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes.
I thank them for serving.
Yes. Item D, petitions, remonstrances, and communications. Do I have any?
Mayor?
Hold on, we got Eric Ellebrock.
Yeah.
Well,
How many does that make tonight, Eric?
For me.
Eric B. Elbrook, 1948 Tyler Avenue. I'll make this quick and to the point. I personally object, and I'm sure there's other people who object to the use of the royal we when we say we want Mr. Neens to stay as our city manager. That's not true. There are people sitting up there right now who are more than happy to see him looking for a job. There are people in this community who are more than happy to see him looking for a job. And they find it really kind of, how should I say it, bad cricket that he went looking for a job right after getting a raise. Thank you.
I thought we were not in a position of where we were directing things to certain people on the board.
Yes. All right, Vice Mayor Minus.
Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like to address this to the city manager.
Okay.
She stepped out.
Oh, you mean the
But
city attorney? Okay.
City attorney. City attorney, I want to ask her, give her a scenario, if you will. If Councilmember Debbie Thomas put something on Facebook, and then I reply to her Facebook about that, there's something pertaining, or that's something that happened in council meeting, is that an ethics violation?
I think what you're asking about is a sunshine violation?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. If it's an item that's is likely to come before council, that would be problematic. If it's something that's already happened before council that isn't going to be coming back, probably not. It just depends on the nature of the communication.
Okay, if it's a possibility, I mean, that it could come back, it's not really a closed issue, as we keep hearing time and time again from one of the residents. So my question is, if it's possible that it could come back, is that a violation? I mean,
If
if
there's
you
a
think it's going to come
likelihood,
back.
the way the statute reads is if there's a likelihood that it's going to come, that it would come before council, then yes, it would be a violation. You know, like so many other things, it's, you know, my favorite, my go-to answer, it depends, right? So it depends on what's being discussed, but the idea is that you're not to exchange ideas and conversations that involve things that are likely to come before council.
Madam Mayor.
All right, hold on. So.
Okay, I will further discuss that with her and file a complaint if necessary.
All right. Are you done? Vice Mayor Minus?
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
okay. I got Mr. Thomas. And then you, Ms. Thomas?
Yes, ma'am. First off, I replied to an article that was published by Mr. Alfrey on Facebook. I replied to the contents of the article. The action that was taken as far as the city manager getting his raise, that was a done deal. We can't go back and relook at that. That's a done deal. Okay, so if anybody has an issue, hey, file your ethics complaint. I've already had my attorney look at it. There's nothing there. So if y'all want to file an ethics complaint, roll the dice. That's all I got to say.
All right, Ms. Thomas?
All I wanted to say was that I just wanted to make sure to put it out there to be understood that neither one of us commented on each other's Facebook posts at any time. That's all I wanted
No,
to.
it wasn't, I
Yes.
said that wasn't a scenario, that was an example.
Okay.
But yeah, he addressed it.
Mr. Alfrey?
Absolutely. First off, I want to say I'm very disappointed, and I'll tell you why I'm disappointed. I found out that our city manager is looking for another job by the newspaper. Probably that's not what's most disappointing. The most disappointing is what 3 weeks ago I asked him in his office during the evaluation, "Are you looking for another job?" He said, "No." Why do you say that? And I said, "Well, because ironically, when you were getting the raise, Miss Minus said you were going to leave us, and I didn't know of any content of you leaving us." Yes, you can go back and watch the video. It's on the video. You said he was going to leave us, so I thought maybe it was a prerequisite of you getting the raise.
That's not true.
It's on the video, which is fine. You can go back and watch it. But my concern, I feel like I was lied to, and I don't appreciate it. I mean, honestly, if you want to go, that's fine. I mean, I would write you a recommendation, but I like to have communication with you. I may not agree with you. I might even like you, but I would like to work with you. And I've gone well beyond that. But when I get lied to, I've had enough. That's all I got to say.
All right. Mr. McNeese?
Thank you, Mayor. Let me say a few things about this elephant in the room, the Naples thing. Most directly, first of all, when we sat down and walked through my evaluation and you asked me, was I looking for a job? I wasn't. I'm not. I haven't been at any point looking for a job. Now let me take a minute, maybe more than I usually do, to walk through this. When you do this job, it's a very interesting thing. And people have this perception that you control a lot. And when in reality, you hope to influence and you work to influence things, but you really control nothing. And the thing that you control least is your own destiny.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me give you an example of what that looks like from my chair. During the last election cycle, a city council member came to see me and said they had been recruited by a candidate for city council, not by another council member, but by someone that was a candidate for city council to join a consortium whose goal would be to replace me with an official from another city in Brevard County.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, kind of thing happens. That's how city managers get turned out at election time. Happens all the time. And so you don't really worry about it, but you never really quite relax because you know that whenever the next election comes around, there's that possibility. And so if you fast forward until earlier this summer, someone reached out to me for whom I have a great deal of respect, someone that lives in Naples, which, by the way, a community that I've lived in for 21 years, where very many of my friends live, most of my closest friends live. I kind of feel like it's where I grew up. Once I got out of college, it's where I went and where I lived until I left there to be a city manager in Sarasota. So I have an affinity for the place. I feel like it's home, really. So I have two homes, one in Indiana, one in Naples. And asked me, would I consider trying to come back there to be the city manager? And I said, well, no, I'm really not interested in that. I'm happy where I am. I got a great city council. We're doing good work. And by the way, if you want to read the cover letter I wrote with the application I eventually turned in, that's how it opens. And it's public record. It's out there to look at. And I kind of let it go. Well, this person worked on me a little bit, and along the way, a lot of things happened. Subsequently, this whole issue of the raise came, and honestly, I felt somewhat disrespected by the way I was criticized afterwards for accepting a simple 3% merit raise that I thought Alice and I were certainly entitled to. There's council members sitting at this table who called me a criminal last year, said I obstructed a police investigation.
That's right.
And so the one thing I want to talk about a little bit is what really bothers me is that this is somehow about money, because money has nothing to do with this. How I get paid is in respect. That's really all that matters to me. You can't buy me with a 3% raise. So in the light of all this and this notion of, well, would you even think about going to Naples and living there and being there and living the rest, which is frankly the rest of my career. I don't want to make a career move. I'm done. I'm not climbing. I'm not chasing a career. And here's the problem in this line of work. To even think about it, to even be in that pool is public. So I said, well, do I want to just throw that opportunity away? And by the way, along the way, I learned that this same consortium building is probably out there for this election too. And I think, well, what do I do for my family? Do I look out my options? Do I think about what might be out there for me? Do I put my head in that ring? So I just have that option available to me, even though I'm really not trying to go anywhere. And sometime after we had that conversation with the evaluation, I finally said, you know what? I'm going to at least put my hat in the ring. Now, that's a high-risk thing to do. One, because it's public, and I wish you were still here, but people like Mr. Ellebrock love an exposed flank. And there's no doubt about it, mine is hanging out there on this. Mm-hmm. But to even be in it, it has to be public. So here's where it is. Y'all don't need to hear my sob stories or all my whining about it, but here's the thing. The city employee newsletter went out last week, and I wrote a column for it that I ultimately didn't place because I wasn't quite sure it was the right thing to be there, and I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to say, but it kind of, the draft of it went kind of like this. It talked about why would I even think about going to Naples? I got a great council here. This has been the most successful year around Melbourne probably for a while. In the last 2 years, the things we've accomplished, that you've accomplished together, that I've been a part of. But I learned a long time ago, that's not really what matters when it comes to sometimes when the elections roll around. It's about other things that I have no control over. But I have a place to live I love. I went home last night and threw the cast net off the dock a few times, and life was good. I was centered and I was fine. And my family's here. My mom and stepdad are here. There are 100 reasons. What I wrote in this column was the reasons why I would consider Naples. Why was it even something that I wanted to have in my consciousness? My affinity for the place, my friends being there, all those sort of things. But what I said at the end was, ultimately, it's just not right. For 50 reasons, it's not right. And so why I've decided there's no real reason for me to even go to interview. I looked at it, I had it in my head, I thought about it, my family and I talked about it. It's not a better thing. Certainly, I certainly wouldn't make more money. I'd make more money, but I'd spend it all. And so it's really not the right thing. So I would love to be able to communicate that more. Some of the council members with whom I've had conversations in the last 10 days or so, we've had that conversation. Councilman Alfrey, I'd love to talk to you more. I have scheduled standing time for every council member, and the ones who come and use it, when they use it, I talk to them. I'd love to communicate with you more and understand what you're up to, what you're trying to accomplish. It's not my choice that we don't communicate more. So that said, I hope that clears the air about the Naples thing. It had nothing to do with money. It had nothing to do with anything except thinking about something that was out there that was available kind of one time for me and my family in a place that means a lot to me, and whether I want to stop long enough to think about it before I said, no, that's not the right thing for us. And yeah, I did. And I did that. That exposes me to criticism, exposes me to kind of a little bit of public ridicule from Eric. I can live with that. I made that decision. But I didn't lie to anyone. I've been straight up with it from the beginning, and that's where it is.
Okay, Mayor, I'd like to respond to that. Well, first off, this is how it should be. And you could have easily texted us, hey, I'd like to speak to you about something. But I don't, from my seat, I shouldn't hear about it in Florida today. When someone asks me, I go, I don't know what he's up to. And second, when you talk about a council member that said something you did who felt it was criminal, that was me. And I stand by what I said. And I know you've hired an attorney, and we won't go into that, but I'll be happy to put it on the agenda, and we can discuss emails and stuff back and forth regarding pushing invoices through the city, okay? So we can bring that out to the open, and I have no problem putting on that. But I'm not backing off of that, because that's definitely what happened. In my 20 years of law enforcement experience, look, I've text messages, if you'd like to sit down, or it doesn't matter, I'll sit down with the chief. But for you to even infer that we can't have a conversation, or, you know, I really like to talk to you, but I can't, that's garbage. Because I have even told you, I've sit and said, hey, I love working with you. I want to work with you. Have I not said I want to build a relationship with you? So do you infer that we don't really have I can talk to these people, but I can't? You want to know why these evaluations say, well, maybe some council members are getting better, more treatment? Because of that kind of action right there. So in the future, I advise, and was it 3 weeks ago? Because we only spoke 3 weeks ago. So do you put in a full application within the last 3 weeks? You got, out of 80 applicants, you got selected to the top 6 within the last 3 weeks? Is that correct? I mean, when did you put in for it? Was it more than 3 weeks ago?
Two things. First of all, I didn't say in any way that we can't speak. I said the time that I set aside for that, you typically don't come for. That's all I said. That's just the truth.
But sometimes I do if I have a question.
You have, yes, you have been a couple times. I have no idea, you're still alleging some sort of criminal activity related to the Un-American investigation. I certainly stand by my behavior there too, and happy to have that looked at from whatever way. I had to make a decision at the point where the process kind of went live with Naples. Was I in it or was I not in it? And yes, it's true, my paperwork was in the hands of the consultant earlier than that, but I just did that so I'd have that option.
Sure.
So at that point where I had to say, am I in or am I not, I knew that if I said I was in, it was pretty likely I'd become a finalist. And the time between when I said, okay, put me in there, and the time they announced their finalists was pretty short. That was not a long period. So
okay.
Yeah, it happened in that time. Yes, that's what I'm telling you.
So the application was already submitted before we even discussed that and asked you, were you looking for another job?
You asked me, was I looking for? No, and I wasn't, and I'm not looking for a job. I said yes, I was willing to be considered for that job.
That's all you had to say. That's all you had to say, Mr. McNeese.
That's what
That's all you had to say.
That's what I said on that day. I am not looking for a job. I was not looking for a job on that day. That was the truth. It remains the truth.
Okay.
Madam Mayor.
I'm done. That's fine. I proved my point.
All right, Mr. Thomas.
Yeah, you know, and again, the thing that really bugged me about the race, for one thing, on the agenda for that particular night, the only thing that was on the agenda was to discuss the appraisals. There was nothing on there about approving a salary. So that was pretty slick. And I don't know how that all went down, but I didn't appreciate that. Then another thing is, you were making 186K. Okay, so the city council, a majority of the council approved your pay raise. And so then this article comes out in the paper that is copied and pasted on Facebook. And so I have two residents come up to me and they're laughing. They're saying, really, you're city manager, you can't live on 186K? And oh, by the way, you're asking for a police headquarters building? I had two residents that say that. Okay, so again, we're talking about winning hearts and minds for the new police building, and then we're approving a pay raise for you from 186K to 192K, and the mean salary of a Melbourne resident is about 50K. And they're looking at saying, you gotta be smoking dope. You can give your city manager a pay raise, but you're gonna want us to pay for a police headquarters building? So I thought the timing of it was really bad, and I tried to get the council to move to wait a year. The other thing that you did to justify the raise, you kept talking about inequity with your position because the highest paid employee is the airport executive director, whose scope of responsibility is about 10% of a city manager's. Well, another way to look at that is he gets stuff done with about a third of the staff that you have. In the last 2 years, he's pulled in about $150 million worth of grants, either from FDOT or through the FAA. And so, yeah, I think he's earned that. And the other thing is, too, I pulled up a U.S. Florida Today article from August 12, 2003. Okay, and it says it's been a year of challenges at the Melbourne International Airport with passengers traffic at the slowest level since 1982. But that hasn't stopped Airport Executive Director Jim Johnson from getting a healthy pay raise, and the Airport Authority Board member said he's worth it. The 7-member board unanimously voted to give Johnson a 9% pay increase this year, boosting his annual salary to $121,000 and change, making him the city's highest paid official. His pay exceeds top officials, including the city manager, Jack Schlebier, the city attorney, Paul Gugelman, the assistant city manager, Amy Elliott, and the police chief, Donald Carey. Okay, so this is not the first time that it's happened. It's happened before in the history of Melbourne, but you made it personal, and a personal attack, I think, on the airport executive director. And then we see this played out in how we interact as a city with the airport. And a good case in point is those administrative items that need to be done between the airport and the city, and we're slow dragging them. We're kicking the can down the road. The cost allocation plan, and also the travel pay. Okay, I asked you about travel pay, the pay policy. When was it? 3 or 4 months ago, and you said, "Yeah, man, everything's moving fine. We're going to get there," and we're still kicking that can down the road. We're still not there yet. Okay. And so, yeah, you're a lot of hooah, but not a lot of doa, especially with relation to the airport. So yeah, I'm a little perturbed, and I stand by my criticism that was on Facebook. And again, any one of you guys, you want to go ahead and file an ethics complaint, roll the dice. My attorney is John Murphy. Go ahead, roll the dice.
Need it. All right, Mr. McNeese.
A whole lot of things are all of a sudden rolled up together. Let me make one thing clear. I responded to the list of administrative items that Mr. Donovan said were in contention or still to be resolved. And there's only one of those that hasn't already been resolved. And one of those that wasn't at least a year old, and it's an issue that happened a year ago and there's nothing left to resolve. And that is the travel policy, which has been in his hands, I believe, since March. And there's nothing I can do about that. There's nothing Allison can do about that. She worked her butt off getting a policy drafted for them, burnt a lot of midnight oil to do it in a hurry, and it's in his hands. And so I honestly, you can criticize me for that, and I know you're very passionate about that, but there is nothing I can do to move that needle. And if that makes me a bad city manager, then I'm a bad city manager. But we've done everything we can do. It's in his hands. Those other things I appreciate. I know when I'm in this job, there's a gap between the market value of the skills I bring and the perception of what people think a public official should be paid based on what their paycheck is. I own that. That's part of the downside of having a public job like this. But the market value is the market value, and I believe I bring skills to the table and experience to the table, even more so. That's worth what you pay me. And I told you when you gave it to me as a city council, I never had a raise like that before. I never asked for a raise before. I never asked for that raise. I didn't orchestrate anything that night. It happened organically in the moment. If I had it to do again, I would have said, thank you, no, which is exactly what I said to the last city council member who came to me 2 years ago and said, Mike, I want you to have a raise. I want you to come to city council. I want to give it to you. I said, no, thank you. I said, the people of Brevard County wouldn't probably stand for that. I make enough. And if I had it to do over again, I'd say that this time too. The only other time it ever came up, I said, thank you, but please don't bring that to the table. I don't need that criticism. And I wish I'd done it this time too.
Mayor? Yeah, Vice Mayor Minus.
Mayor, I really thought that we as a council was above all of the rhetoric and everything that I've heard and I've seen on social media and heard. I've really been bamboozled. I thought that our council members, I thought that we were the best council in Brevard County. In our Florida League of Cities meeting this past weekend before, I was told that they really admired the way we carried our meetings, the way we conducted ourselves. And here, I hear and I've seen that we are cutting each other down. We're cutting down our staff. We're cutting down the city manager. We're cutting down the city attorney and each other. That is very beneath us, I believe. And I believe that we should stop the pettiness. If we have an ought with the city manager, then we should go to him instead of putting it on Facebook or telling someone else who we know or someone else who may be running for one of these seats. It is very petty. We need to be bigger than that. We are professionals and we need to act like professionals. If anyone has an ought with me, then I strongly suggest I am here. My phone number is listed. And I don't have a problem with meeting with anyone personally. And I think we need to do that with each other. I think we need to stop this I was really disturbed to see that on Facebook. I really was. We're professionals. I don't care where you've been. I don't care how many times or how many years you did this, that, and the other. But what you are displaying shows your character. You could have been whatever, 50, 60 years. You could have been in whatever, 20, 30, 40 years. But you are not displaying what you should as a city council member. And I'm asking each one of us to please cut it out. Let's do what we were elected here to do. And let's get on with the business of the city of Melbourne.
All right. Any other further discussion? Mr. McNeese?
Yeah, just one more thing, Mayor. I just want to make one thing really, really crystal clear. We collectively are doing some really great work here. We've advanced the quality of this organization over the last 5 years enormously. Our skill level has developed. We've advanced some things within the city that the city has been pushing uphill for 10 or 20 years and advanced them in large measurable ways. And that's why I came here in the first place. Because I saw that the time was right, those things were coming, and I'm not trying to take credit for any of that. The only thing I take credit for is I saw it coming. And I said, I want to get on that train. And I came here and got on that train. I said to someone, a developer who came to Melbourne a few years ago, I told the mayor this story the other day, he was trying to figure out where to invest his money, and he had some opportunities in Southeast Florida, down in Crazy Land, and he was thinking about Melbourne. And I said, well, think about who you want to be. Do you want to be the guy that built the 1,000th condominium tower in Miami and Fort Lauderdale, or do you want to be the guy who's known for really changing the game and making a major difference in the trajectory of a great city like Melbourne? And well, that guy kind of decided Melbourne was the place to be. Well, it's kind of how I feel too. They're building another 1,000 condo towers, another 1 million mega homes in Naples, but we can't. There are not that many places we can do what we're doing here. So I'm here to tell you, that's why I came here. That's why I'm still here, and I'm here to work together with all of you, all 7 of you. You're all very different. You have different demands. You have different ways you do things. You have different ways you communicate. I'm here to do the best I can do with each and every one of you every day, and that's what I'll be here for tomorrow.
All right, thank you, Mr. McNeese.
And Mayor?
Mr. Alfrey.
Yes, ma'am. Mayor, I got the floor. I will say real quick that maybe the council needs to kind of get a course on how to do a performance evaluation. I've had a lot of people say, and even when I was an employee at Melbourne, one thing, you never got outstanding in everything because you could never improve. You can't improve if you're perfect, if you're outstanding. That being said, maybe we should have some criteria so we're kind of on the same page on performance reviews. And I will say, the last thing I'm going to say is, I know Mr. McNeese was not very happy with my evaluation, which he did to me meet standards, but there are some things like job knowledge that I think he's outstanding. And I put that. I was just being honest. Outstanding. So in the future, I think maybe we should just be on the same page, and some people kind of learn how to do an evaluation for employees. That's all I got to say.
All right, if nothing any further, I'll adjourn the meeting at 10:09.